we have inherited and continue to work tirelessly to advance Kwame Nkrumah's ideological convictions and efforts to build a mass Pan-Africanist party and cultivate relationships with progressive and African and international revolutionary parties and organizations worldwide. With Nkrumah's Imperialism, we want to kind of make it clear as our guide that we conclude the following. International imperialism is the primary enemy of Africa and the diaspora and of world humanity. International imperialism is dominated by US imperialism. Neocolonialism is the ongoing and current strategy of international imperialism to control and exploit Africa and the world, both its natural resources and labor, now represented by members of the indigenous people, to further institutionalize and Africanize the exploitation of the African masses. Zionism is an instrument of international imperialism, dominated by US imperialism. Zionism is racist. Zionism has its most heinous and murderous expression with the occupation of Palestine and genocide committed against the Palestinian people. Zionism is an ally of neocolonialism in Africa and her diaspora. And neocolonial Africa and her African class allies worldwide have pledged allegiance to Zionism. Pan-Africanism is Africa and the diaspora's contribution to the international revolutionary struggle against international imperialism, neocolonialism, and Zionism worldwide. The revolutionary African people's struggle for Pan-Africanism is a fight to overthrow neocolonialism, including its African greed-driven and corrupt puppet governments, and replace them with a people's democracy organized through a mass revolutionary Pan-Africanist party, building scientific socialism and the unification of Africa under an all-African government. And with that, we just wanted to, again, to make it clear where we are attempting to take our seminar and the nature of the discussions that we would seek to have towards moving forward towards the realization of Pan-Africanism. And at this juncture, we will have some of Kwame Nkrumah's words to introduce our first panel, which is Down with Neocolonialist, Imperialist, and Zionist Military Complexes, i.e. US AFRICOM, EU NATO, ECOWAS, ECOMOG, and other imperialist entities in Africa and the world. Again, this panel is important to us, and we think it's important to the discussion of the struggles of our people, because again, we are identifying some of the instruments of repression used by imperialism to oppress, exploit, and repress the struggles of African and other peoples worldwide. And so we will take a couple of minutes to hear Nkrumah's words on the imperialist, colonialist military complexes.
This is another reason why we should come together in a unified African economic plan, which, operating on a continental scale, can make a solid attack on the imperialist domination in Africa. We should, without delay, aim at the creation of a joint African military command. There is little wisdom in our present separate effort to build up and maintain defense forces, which in any case would be ineffective in a major world conflict. If we examine this problem realistically, we would ask, which single African state could protect itself against an imperialist aggressor? And how much more difficult this will be when some states are allowing the imperialists to maintain bases on their territories. I have already referred to the military forces which South Africa is raising and the danger it poses for the new African states and the struggle of those still in chains. Only our unity can provide us with anything like adequate protection. If we do not unite and combine our military forces, South Africa, along with her allies or any other colonialist imperialist power, can pick us off one by one. Not only that, some of us, out of a sense of insecurity, may be drawn into making defense pacts with imperialists, which will endanger the security of us all. It follows that if we set up in Africa a common economic planning organization and a joint military command, we shall have to work out and adopt a common foreign policy to give political direction to our continental development and our continental defense.
We have a representation in our seminar today of our brothers and sisters who are fighting against imperialism in their respective areas. Our first panel, we have our brother from Niger, Hamadou Ibrahim. We also have Akayaba Addai-Sebo from Ghana. We have our sister Eugenia Charles from Haiti, and our brother Paul Sankara, who is the brother and a political organizer continuing from Burkina Faso. So we will first bring in our sister from Haiti, who will talk about the ongoing struggles of our brothers and sisters in Haiti, who even as most recent, we have a neo-colonial government in Africa that is agreed to send troops to help quell the rebellions of our brothers and sisters inside of Haiti. So we will turn the floor over to our sister, Eugenia Charles.
Greetings, everyone, and thank you for having me on this great day to honor a great man. I want to start with a quote from our founding father, Empereur Jacques Ier, General Jean-Jacques Dessalines. The Black whose fathers are in Africa, will they have nothing? One of the cause for his assassination on October 17, 1806, while he was pushing for agrarian reforms, for the slaves who had fought to gain their independence to be able to have land to work to provide for themselves and their family, and for the country to become a prosperous land. I was born on this land. I will die on this land, and I will never allow any foreigners to come and trample on it. Our independence was won on the battlefield, and it must be defended on the battlefield. Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Today, for the Black race, the fight that Jean-Jacques Dessalines was leading back in the 1800s, we are still fighting that same war. Dessalines was taken down early before he had the opportunity to push his agenda forward, not just for Haiti, because he created an empire for the Black race. And one of his most objectives after he liberated Haiti was to work toward going to Africa and stop slavery right there where it was, the brothers and sisters were being taken from. He sent letters here to the President of the United States asking for the Blacks who were enslaved here to be sold to him so they can be free and liberated in Haiti. On January 1st, 1804, he declared Haiti a haven, a sanctuary for all who are being oppressed. Any persons who are being oppressed can land in Haiti and become a free man and a free woman. Haiti is the beacon of light. Jean-Jacques Dessalines is the father of human rights as we speak about it today. The rights to have proper housing, the rights to healthcare, the right to live as a decent human being. Those are the words, the stuff that he was pushing forward that really scare the masters. And for that, even after we had pulled ourselves together to liberate the nation, he was assassinated for those same ideologies. This year, 2023, we are looking at 108 years since the US imperialist system landed in Haiti with their military might. It is true when you're reading the books, they will say that the US occupation ended in 1934. But really, was it ended? Because as you're looking at the structures of politics in Haiti and what the Haitians are going through, the occupation never ended. It simply took a different form. Our political system is controlled and manipulated on a daily basis by the US governments, whether it's here the Department data, the State Department, the folks at the Pentagon, or the mighty US Embassy in Haiti. They decide who's going to become president, who's going to become senators, who's going to become deputy. And oftentimes, the individual they select to put in office are individuals who have had some kind of bad deed they had done. In Haitian Creole, we said, "Moun ki gen zore zano kai ofev," somebody who made a pact with the devil. So whatever the devil wants them to do, they're going to do it to stay in power. Yes, they left Haiti on some level. They created an army that killed and tortured Haitians by large numbers. You all heard about the Papa Doc and the Baby Doc era, the number of people who got killed. And even after we started the process of democracy in 1990 with the elections of Jean-Bertrand Aristide, quickly he was couped. And from that coup, over 5,000 people, that's the number they were able to count, were killed from the coup d'etat. The people who were behind that coup was supported directly by folks from the State Department. The members of the military juntas were on the payroll of the CIA. Everybody is very familiar with Emmanuel Toto Constant. And Aristide was returned to Haiti, but under what circumstances? Haiti was forced to sign the structural adjustment policies from the IMF and the World Bank, which forced us to privatize our 6 state-owned entities that were thriving, employing Haitians. And once those entities were shut down, our unemployment rate skyrocketed. And we have not recovered from that. Our telecommunication companies is being controlled by folks outside of Haiti. So they can do whatever. Even the elections, recently with the last election we had with Jovenel Moïse and Joseph Michel Martelly, Digicel, the telephone company, Martin Boot, everybody's familiar with them, was sending information to folks on their cell phone, telling them who to go vote for. So really, where is the independence and the sovereignty that our founding fathers had fought to leave us with? We are right now at an impasse. Haiti does not have a current president. Haiti is being led by a de facto prime minister that's been put into office. Mr. Ariel Henry was selected by former President Jovenel Moïse before his assassination. But prior to him holding the ceremony to put him in place, he was assassinated the night before. And I'm sure you all have heard and read many articles about his assassination. What was very particular about his assassination, the people who was going to his house were using a megaphone and asking his securities to let them in because they were agent of the DEA. We all know who the DEAs are, and what they do is the drugs enforcement agencies of the United States. And some of the individuals who participated in the assassinations were agents working for the United States government. We still have a quote-unquote trial that is going on in Haiti, but there is also a trial happening here in the United States in which the judge overseeing the trial in Florida has asked folks here in the United States not to communicate to the Haitian people or the judges any information that they have in the case. It was expected after the killings of the president that the populations were going to come out and demonstrate to show how happy they were for him being assassinated. They miscalculated the plan, and as you looked at the works of Mr. Nkrumah, you'll see the parallels between what he put in his books and what's happening in Haiti currently. The population stay behind. They are very intelligent because the video were already circulating online with the agent expressing that they were from the DEA. So we did not come out to support the killing because yes, we had issues with Jovenel Moïse, but however, the populations wanted to resolve their issues locally. Moving closer, since last year, the US has been campaigning for a multinational force to come into Haiti. The current budget of the Haitian National Police and the Haitian Army that was disbanded back then is about $20 million a year. But yet the US and the rest of the international community is projecting to bring a multinational force that will cost between $200 to $400 million. Last week, the US and Kenya signed an accord where the US agreed to provide $1 million, and the Kenyan government is pushing. I've heard the speech of Mr. Dr. Alfred Mutua, happily expressing his contentment for coming to help the Haitian people. The Haitian people did not call on Mr. Mutua to bring force into Haiti. The United States government, through their 10-year strategic plans, program this multinational force to come into Haiti. Yes, we have gang situation going on in Haiti. Know that 95% of the weapons that are circulating on our soil come from right here from the United States. So we do not need a multinational force in Haiti. What we need is for Haiti to be removed from the grip of the United States, for us to push forward with our own economic development to become a prosperous nation, and most definitely for our elections to be controlled locally. I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
We thank you very much for your contribution. We'll come back to you in our question and answers, because I think there's some additional information, particularly regarding Kenya, that's pertinent to this discussion. But now we'll bring in our brother, Paul Sankara, who's, again, just the brother of the late Thomas Sankara, and will present to us, to talk to us a little about what is going on with Burkina Faso at all. All right, we thank you. Brother Sankara, the mic is yours.
Thank you for this meeting today, because using how after 6 decades, the speech and the philosophy of Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, unfortunately, still resonating truth today. What happened in Burkina and the Sahel region, we got to go back to the history quickly. 1960s, most of African countries, especially the Francophone ones, French-speaking one, access to independence, quote unquote. 23 years after, a 4 years revolutionary experience occurred in Burkina Faso under the leadership of Thomas Sankara. It's concrete realization that has been done in this country. First of all, raising people's conscience that regardless of the situation and the history, we can change the path of the development of our country, empowering women. About 20 women has been appointed between 1983 to 1987, secretaries, what we call ministers, high-rank socio-political directions. The youth, organizing the countryside people, what we call the peasants, those who are working on the land, because Burkina Faso is a landlocked country. The main resources comes from agriculture, livestock, and a couple of decades now, mining gold exploited by others. The road, the dams, but beside what has been done concretely in the social, political activity, development in the country, the diplomacy was a new one. For example, New Caledonia in the United Nations, Burkina Faso, also the activity for its sovereignty. First time ever head of states went to RSD, Saudi Democratic Republic, that's fighting 30 years ago for its, and more, for its independence against Morocco. We gave symbolically some weapons to ANC during the time of when brother late Mandela was in jail. Thabo Mbeki, the former president in South Africa, was part of some delegation just to advocate the South African situation, apartheid, at that time, against apartheid. Burkina Faso at that time denounced the agreement, different type of agreement with France. The speech in when François Mitterrand, the former president, the French president, came in Burkina, was a historical one. In the United Nations, Thomas was saying, I'm not talking just for my beloved Burkina Faso, but about those who have something to claim in the world, talking about the Palestinian situation. Matter of fact, brother late Yasser Arafat came in a visit in Burkina Faso in the 1984, 1985. I don't remember exactly the date. So those kind of things did not let the French and the US approach about the speech and the different activities, quote unquote, contagious. Because like the sister says, since the two groups, the Monrovia group and the Casablanca group, nothing has really changed. You have those who really want to remain the puppets and do the dirty job for colonialist purpose. That's why today, not just in Burkina, but the whole African country, among the different references, also gave for Kwame Nkrumah, Mandela, Patrice Lumumba, Guinea-Bissau, with etc. Thomas Sankara is one of the reference for especially the youth. That's why in Burkina Faso, the current young captain, ironically, he has the same age that Thomas when he was taking the power, 34, 35 now. He claimed officially that he's getting inspiration from what has been done in 4 years in Burkina Faso under the leadership of Thomas Sankara. The French people, especially the government, I want to make the difference between the government and institutional France and people, among them artists, scholarship, scholars. They're still working together, but the French just took some decision to cut any funding to Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, sort of punishment. That's really
remind us what happened with General de Gaulle in 1958 and Brother Sékou Touré, rest in peace. There was a referendum in 1958 as countries before they get independence, who want to stay in the independent but in the control of France, and who want to be free and entirely independent. The referendum came up with more than 55, 60, any given African countries, Francophone, except in Guinea. Sékou Touré said, no, we prefer being poor in a dignity than being rich in a slavery. So General de Gaulle and the whole system said, okay, take anything, your independence, but we're going back with all the tools, equipment, and you name it. So it's kind of a, if you don't follow us, we will cut the facet, and you have to be independent by yourself and get your means and for your own development. That's what happened today with Mali, Niger, vis-a-vis France. But somehow it's a good thing, but we have to learn to make assessment and have strategic approach for our own independence without France being behind. For example, you know, that's a big debate since decades, the currency for 14 countries in Africa, linked by French treasury. You have to take your independence, but that's your, with all the consequences. You have the CFA controlled by French system, financial and treasury system. The lens, the uranium, the first provider to France, which is Niger, but lacking of electricity in Niger. How can you explain this kind of contradiction? So I'm going to wrap up in the conversation and Q&A. We can go further in details. That's why today the mass people in Burkina Faso are supporting the current government. I'm not advocating for coup d'etat, but at the same time, if it has to be an approach to change things, yes, because once again, you have people, even well-educated, that still think that we cannot live without France. You have it in any given country, especially the French-speaking one. That's sad, that's the reality, but we need to build a strong and concrete Pan-Africanist, including brothers that is in diaspora and in the US. And I will just finish with this point. When Thomas at the 38th Assembly, United Nations, went to Harlem, has a speech with a community and said, my White House is in your Black Harlem. So let's be together, find a good strategy, and then we will overcome. That's for sure. Thank you.
Again, we thank our brother from Burkina Faso for his contribution. We now will have a brother from Niger, Brother Hamadou Ibrahim, and he will kind of update us about the situation there. Niger, and there's no question, is one of those states that is in the forefront of the struggle against French imperialism in Africa. And so we're very pleased to have him here to share with us. Brother Ibrahim, the floor is yours.
Sorry for this bad connection that we get in Niger. All the réseau get problem. We get also the problem of electricity. So we are very, very sorry to that situation. As my comrade told about the situation of this revolution, is a new revolution in Niger. We are not for the coup d'etat. This coup d'etat is one we are together, and some of us who are not understood for the moment, who are following the same route of President Talon and Macky Sall and Ouattara and others. We pray God that with our sensitizing, they can be in the same group, in the same mood. So this coup d'etat of Niger, we take it like a time of liberation, a time of this revolution that we have to move for another freedom. As my comrade say, the main problem here is the problem of are facing this situation of electricity, of products, the price of which are very high, and some of the workers have not get their pay because there are another new situation that they put and so voluntary of the education has get some problem inside. Some of the people of the last government has make some mistakes and make some smuggle inside the personnel of the voluntaries of education. Because of that, they cut also money, salaries from the function public. Right now, money of us has not get our payment, and we are facing also the situation of the product who is very, very high. The ECOWAS embargo in which we get the BCAO who join with IMOA to the CFA, and we get this problem of connection of the bank, and also we get the problem of electricity of Niger, because as my comrade told you, it is a reality that we are living, because some of us are not to get at all electricity, and the one who get the solar electricity are not yet available because all the borders are closed because of the embargo, and there is no product. So we are sharing a very, very difficult situation, and France has not allowed us in the free way because of what we have done. Burkina Faso has left France, Mali have left them, and finally we have done what we call in French coup de grâce, the last weapon to make that the tree go down, the last liberation that we have made, and that all for Africa, in spite of those people who are working for France, imperialism, we are together and we have to be together. We have to make a process. We have to make a very, very good project for all our Africa, and getting what Nkrumah has told about the unity of Africa. Why not? It is the time to join together, and we have to be together, and without this union, it is very difficult for Africa to develop. So what we see as we are the representative of the trade unions at Geneva, we understood many situation of the United States and the United Nations in Geneva, and we get some discrimination, and we have to make a process to see how we can make our free forever, to see how we can make a project for all Africa to develop, to be free from imperialism and capitalism. So right now, France is making ambiguous situation in our communities because of terrorism, and to get them in the same situation to make their people who will make the information for them, and they use the people because of money. All the things of this poverty, we get many natural resources, but we have to develop our own resources in the favor of all the communities. So we are very happy to get you and all the Pan-Africanism who are fighting, struggling to make all Africa free. So for us, it's not easy because some of our people are hungry because of this particular situation. Comrade, I tell you seriously, we need your help. You do your best, and you need also your help because of this situation that France is always keeping the resources of Niger, Mali, and Burkina. And we have also to make a process to see how can we be really free from this imperialism from France, because all the things is going according to France in their treasure, and we have to make this situation very early, make it finish and get our united money for Africa. So that's the main question. Right now, people are very hungry. People are facing the situation of piscos. They're afraid. Can they fulfill the objective? And we are here as leaders, and we are always making sensitizing for them, and to show them that we are together to be their own people who will make them know the real situation that imperialism is looking for. So France get out he take out from Niger his ambassador, but he say also the military forces will go very soon, and that's not enough for us. Is not the full stop. We have to continue our struggle. We have to be very vigilant in our struggling because of the situation that they can do. Thank you.
All right, we thank you. I think one of the commonalities that we can see with the presentations being made is the commonality of struggle of our people in different parts of the world. And that is the purpose for the A-APRP-GC's effort to help bring the forces of revolution and progress together. Currently, we'll bring in our brother, Akayaba Addai-Sebo. He is a representative of the Osajifo Youth Movement in Ghana. We are very happy to have him here because Nkrumah is definitely probably the leading ideologue for the struggle for Pan-Africanism in the history of our people today. So again, we bring in our brother Kayaba Addai-Sebo. My brother, you have the floor.
I am very, very angry, and my anger stems from the fact that my generation has betrayed the younger generation. My generation that had the best of everything given to us by the Nkrumah generation. When it came for us to rule Africa, we've been ruling Africa from the 1980s to the present. That is my generation. We have captured power in Ghana. My generation overthrew a democratically elected Nkrumahist regime, the same way as the democratically elected Nkrumah regime was overthrown in 1966, and nothing has changed. So my generation, what my generation has done is to destroy the industrial, manufacturing, agricultural, research and development foundations that Nkrumah generation laid for Ghana. By doing this, they have placed Ghana in a state of permanent unemployment, inflation, debt, and underdevelopment. Because if you destroy the industrial and manufacturing base of a country, where are the youth going to be employed? And this is what has happened. So we import everything from toothpick to catapults. Whereas during Nkrumah generation, we were producing almost all our needs. This is the state of things in Ghana at the moment, and it's my generation that has made it possible. But I'm saying this to underscore a particular point. The Nkrumah generation made it possible for my generation to be educated in the best universities in the world: Yale, Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, name it. So my generation, we were educated in Western and Eastern European and Russian societies and had a mental and visual sense of development in these societies that we lived and studied. But when we assumed absolute power from 1980s to the present, you can see today Ghanaians drinking from the same pond where goats, sheep, pigs, name it, ducks, take their water. And this is 2023, and you find it happening in Ghana. Why should this be so? That is why I am angry with my generation. So I have come to the conclusion that the youth cannot expect any inspiring political and economic perspectives from my generation. My generation, we are what Fanon described as the black skin's white mask. We are totally alienated from the problems and the needs and the rights of the mass of our population. And what exists in Niger, where the French, the Americans are exploiting and appropriating the uranium and paying them peanuts, it's the same thing that is happening in Ghana. We found 3 years ago, we found deposits, rich deposits of lithium. And guess what? The government gives the rights to an Australian startup company that has no history of lithium mining. And the country is getting less than 10% from this contract. This is what is happening in Ghana. You don't talk about gold. You don't talk about oil, bauxite, manganese. This is what is happening in Ghana. So what is happening in Niger is very, very, very important to us. And we have to ensure that Niger succeeds. If Niger fails, we have failed, because the situation in Haiti is a constant reminder to us that this is what the French, US, and its NATO allies are saying, that if you try to challenge our interests and our global domination, this is what is happening to you, Haiti. This is what is happening to you. Because in the 19th century, Haiti got its independence and overthrew the French, They defeated the Portuguese, they defeated the Spanish, they defeated the British twice, the French twice, they defeated the Americans twice, disgraced them, but then they tricked them. And now look at the situation in Haiti. Then while we are thinking about Niger also, we have to think about Congo. It is uranium that has made Congo to be what it is today. It is uranium that led to the assassination of Patrice Lumumba and his body be dissolved in acid by the Belgians. So uranium and strategic minerals are of great importance. And so we should not see the situation in Niger and consider it as a simple issue. Now you hear about France, but we hear very little about the Americans. But they are there in Niger. They are there quietly, and they have bases like the Germans and all. They also have to leave, but it depends on our sense of solidarity. So Niger must not fail. If Niger fails, we have failed the people of Niger, because we have witnessed such situations evolving, opportunities that can help Africa to pick itself up and transform, come, and we let it disappear because of our disorganization. This is my concern now. Niger must not fail, and it must not be isolated, because Maurice Bishop came in Grenada, and Grenada was isolated. Thomas Sankara was in Burkina Faso, and was isolated. So they could deal with him in isolation. But now, fortunately, we have Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger coming together. Guinea is not certain, but I am not going to sit on a public platform and tell Niger what to do. But they should know what they have to do, because what they fear most, these colonialists, is Africa must unite. They fear these three words. So that is the code for you. Everything is there. The people of Niger, everything, the blueprint is there for you. In Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, Class Struggle in Africa, Revolutionary Path, everything is there. Nkrumah is there for you. So our reality is this. All of us on this platform now, if you cast your eyes across Africa, can you point to a single liberated territory? That is the challenge facing us. We need Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso united for us to have a territory to really liberate the entire continent and unite the entire continent. That is our objective. Thank you very much.
All right, we thank you, my brother. If anyone has any questions, this is the good time for that. But the one I would like to ask you all, or how does the militarization of Africa by international imperialism negatively impact Africa, and what needs to happen to change this condition? That is the question that A-APRP-GC will kind of start us out with.
Well, militarization is colonization, and it should not be allowed, and we should resist it in our Bantu stance. I call the 1884-85 Berlin Conference division of Africa, partition of Africa into the state that we are now. I call our countries now Bantu stance, because apartheid still remains, and they have military bases all over. And I always start by my own neighborhood or backyard in Ghana. The Americans are there, and this has made the ruling regime very arrogant, and they do not listen to the plights of the people because they know that the Americans are there. So we should do whatever we can to listen to Nkrumah, because we cannot allow any and must not allow any military bases in Africa. Military bases is a tool of recolonization, and we must resist it. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with the brother from Ghana. Since the colonization, that was one of the two, Islamization or how you call it, Christianization and militarism. How you change the mind, how you take the lands, and for those who want to resist, how you use the violence whip tool. And second thing, quickly, how come the first ever powerful country, so-called the US in the world, and the fifth one, France, in 10 to 12 years did not succeed to do something against the so-called terrorists in the Sahel region, even more than the Sahel. Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad, Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, and even the coastal one, Ivory Coast, Togo, Benin and Ghana has experienced some attacks. How come the US, AFRICOM, and France, that has drones and any type of equipment that can see an ant, a mosquito from the satellites, and people, 50, 100 people, motorcycles, are going to destroy and put some chaos in certain part of the countries. That's why the Pan-African movement said enough is enough. Are you really friends? Do you want to help us or not? Because if we make the assessment, in 10 to 12 years, you have helped our enemies than you did for us. Lastly, no African countries has a weapon factory on the African continent. How can they get such number and quote-unquote quality of weapons against the national armies, whether it is Nigeria with Boko Haram, Mali, Niger, Burkina, you name it, Chad, and so and so. That's why they're questioning, the people questioning all these countries, those countries. What is your role really in this situation? So they have to leave. They have to leave. And so we can go back and apply what Kwame Nkrumah has said. One army, one market, one currency, and we have a powerful voice on the United Nations. That's it. Thank you.
I would like to add something. I echoed what's already been said before me. I think in looking at what Nkrumah has mentioned in terms of the training of the militaries, we have some work to do. Yes, we've had the opportunity to attend some of the major universities, but the education that we are receiving is not an education that is preparing us to work for the betterment of our society. We are trained, and no disrespect to all of us here, we all been to college here in the state or elsewhere, we've been educated. But as I look at the works and the challenges that we are going through as a people, we need to develop school system and education system within our borders that create conscientious human beings. And yes, we should get rid of all this mighty military powers, but we are also in a phase where we need to protect our borders as we unite as a Black race under one African nations. We need to be able to put ourselves in a position to train our own soldiers to be of conscience and loyal to the nations and to the continent, so they do not become puppets of the other military powers.
Thank you. And if I can ask you, my sister, can you also talk a little bit about the impact of the decision in Kenya regarding the troops coming to Haiti, how the people are responding to that, or how that impacts Haiti?
Thank you for that opportunity. We do not, the Kenyans are our brothers and sisters, but from the perspective that they are coming in and have aligned themselves with the US government, just for the sake of getting a better budget. We don't want Kenya to come in Haiti in that regards. There's been numerous organizations who have written letters and sent to different bodies at the UN Security Council asking them to vote against the resolutions. And we've also sent numerous communiques to the Kenyan government asking them to not engage in these things to supporting the US imperialist politics, because Haiti is at the current juncture, because of US politics, because of current US mangling. The force, you have to know a little bit about the backdrop. The de facto prime minister wrote the letter to the international community requesting the force because the US embassy in Haiti had asked him to do that. look, the man has already been cited as someone who's possibly was involved in the assassination of the president. And also he was put into office with threats from the core group, which is a group of countries it was a group formed back in 2003 after the Canadian initiatives to put Haiti under a protectorate. So we as Haitians, we realize that we have problems that need to be resolved, but these issues cannot be resolved when you have the United States, you have the French and the Canadian who's dictating and pulling things from left and right and preventing us from being able to sit and have a cohesive dialogue about how to resolve our situation. Any proposition that the Haitians bring forth that does not support the mingling of the US government has rejected, and they keep on saying that we are reluctant to come together. For a few weeks ago, I was listening to a presentation where Juan Gabriel Valdez, the Brazilians, was saying that the Haitians are too strong of a nationalist. Yes, we are nationalists because our ancestors fought to leave us this country, and it was clear that Haiti should be a soil where no foreigners should come in, no more masters coming to our country. So it is very saddened at this moment to see that Kenya has decided to go full force in embarking with the US government and then saying that the Haitian people called them. The Haitian people have not called on Kenya to come support Haiti. When the Kenyan government sent their missions to Haiti to observe, before they met with Ariel Henry, they went to the US embassy. Here in the United States, they met with the US folks at the UN, and they came to DC to meet with the US government. They've received their mandate from the US government. They are pushing what the US government want them. Even in the case, we in Haiti, we wanted to look at our brothers from Rwanda to assist us. And we want our soldiers to be trained by people like us who understand the struggle that we are going through. But that's not what the US is supporting. So as a result, whatever proposition, even the Haitians who's being trained here in the US Army or Marines, or some of our Haitians who are in Canada or France who have military training, they are willing to come to Haiti voluntarily to assist in helping and resolving the situation. But US is adamant that they need to come to multinational forces. Understand, Haiti has iridium, Haiti has gold, Haiti has cobalt, Haiti has all the resources that you see that they are fighting to keep Africa oppressed. So right now, when you see Elon Musk opening a satellite in Haiti to provide internet service, you have to be asking yourself, what is that all really about? Because we are the one place over here that has tons of uranium that has not been touched.
Thank you, my sister, and thank all of our guests, our panelists on this program. We'll close our question and answers and get ready to take a little break. But before that, we would just like to say on behalf of the A-APRP-GC that we are for the dismantlement of all neo-colonialist, imperialist, and Zionist military, industrial, and corporate complexes, including AFRICOM, NATO, ECOWAS, etc. And there's also these U.S. imperialist institutions in the Caribbean that are also operating there. We reaffirm the declaration of Kwame Nkrumah that imperialism will find its grave in Africa. International imperialism has its boots on the ground in Africa to defend and retain their neo-colonial puppets in power and to further grease their political, cultural, and economic control of Africa, to mercilessly exploit the labor of African people and continue and expand the vicious rape of her human, natural, and mineral resources. We declare an imperialist military-free zone for Africa and will work with all political parties and organizations working to free Africa of all imperialist armies. We condemn all African governments in Africa who provide sanctuary and basis of our operation to imperialist militaries in Africa. We condemn the government of Kenya for accepting the role of a surrogate and instrument of U.S. imperialism in Haiti. And so with that, we just wanted to make that clear. We will take a short break here now. We do have a video that will kind of highlight or take us into our next discussion, which will be regarding neo-colonialist, imperialist, and Zionist exploitation of Africa's raw materials. So that's a good segue from our first discussion moving forward. And we thank you. To the video, please.
destruction of belief in Africa, the lack of self-confidence, the feeling that we can't do it. And I think that was also a result of the colonial impact, because I think it was short enough to destroy leadership in Africa, but not long enough to replace it with anything else. So the old ways, the old political...
Liberation time, elevation time. Okay, then mix up and join. Yes, this is the time for liberation. Mama Africa awaits a revolution. This is the time for meditation. Free up your mind from the lies and illusions. This is the time for liberation. Come make we stand up and start a revolution. In these times of elevation, have you keep your head above all pollution. Revolution in the air, my people prepare. No more African children, not to shed no tear. Full time be aware, Babylon no sincere after all. Who has sent the guns them out here? Spiritual warfare, they may rage on the people like they don't care. The world we live in is unfair, yet a victim mentality won't take us nowhere. Time for us to rise and realize we must unite and come together as one. We tired of the lies, the alibis. Come make we stand up and go chant them down. This is the time for liberation. Mama Africa awaits a revolution. This is the time for meditation. Free up your mind from the lies and illusions. This is the time for liberation. Come make we stand up and start a revolution. In these times of elevation, have you keep your head above all pollution. Calling on the soldiers of Mozambique, Kenya and Zimbabwe. Calling on the soldiers of Nigeria, Ghana and Mali. Soldiers of Uganda, Congo, tell me, are you ready to uphold the legacies of Kwame Nkrumah, Marcus Garvey and Selassie? Got to liberate, got to elevate. Don't you hesitate, it's never too late. Got to liberate, got to elevate. Don't you hesitate, it's never too late. Yeah. The African political actors, professors and teachers and doctors, pleading to the imams and pastors. Please tell me somebody cultures. Unity is what we need in Africa. Peace and powers in Africa. In the United States of Africa. Free from Asia, Europe and America. Tell me something about Shanghai and Nubia. Something about Kemet and Ethiopia. All of the ancient African empires, plus the emperors, real born conquerors. This is the time for liberation. Mama Africa awaits a revolution. This is the time for meditation. Free up your mind from the lies and illusions. This is the time for liberation. Come make we stand up and start a revolution. In these times of elevation, have you keep your head above all pollution. Yeah, yeah. Go rebel youth, go chant them down. Yeah, yeah. Go Jahringo, go chant them down. This is the time for liberation. This is the time for elevation. This is the time for meditation. And not time for hesitation. This is the time for liberation. This is the time for elevation. This is the time for meditation.
All right, we will move into our second panel. Again, all of these discussions are interconnected. Our second panel is themed or Down with Neo-Colonialists, Imperialists, and Zionist Exploitation of Africa's Raw Materials. Again, I think for the A-APRP-GC, we want to highlight those things that we really think makes a difference in the conditions in which our people live. Following the war on Africa that resulted with the kidnapping, the trafficking, and enslavement of our people. European imperialism, including the United States, at the Berlin Conference of 1884, sat and made the decision to divide up the continent of Africa amongst themselves with the purpose of being able to exploit Africa's labor and resources to fuel the industries of their countries and whatnot. And so that's what was done. So colonialism was the strategy for imperialism to assure that the industries of their particular countries were fueled by raw materials. And Africa was the primary source for that to happen. And so part of the discussion about the emancipation, the liberation, and the advancement of Africa and the upliftment of African people is the question of the minerals and the resources of Africa being used for the benefit of the people of Africa themselves. And that is the nature of this discussion here. Question of neocolonialism, we just wanted to highlight is because now this process is being controlled inside of Africa by Africans themselves, and they are working for imperialism to do that. And so that becomes a very important issue, because we cannot resolve the question of the emancipation, liberation of our people and their advancement without addressing the question of our own people who are participating in their exploitation. And so moving into that discussion, we will highlight Nkrumah's, some of his comments on the imperialist and colonialist extraction of raw materials inside of Africa.
It is easy to see that the imperialists and the colonialists are determined to retain the African countries in the position of suppliers of cheap raw materials. If we do not resist this threat, and if we throw in our lot with the common market, we shall doom the economy of Africa to a state of perpetual subjection to the economy of Western Europe. This will, of course, hinder the industrialization of our young African states. It is impossible to think of economic development and national independence without possessing an unfettered capacity for maintaining a strong industrial power. The activities of the common market are therefore fraught with dangerous political and economic consequences for the independent African states. The organization constitutes an attempt to replace the old system of colonial exploitation by a new system of collective colonialism, which will be stronger and more dangerous than the old evils we are striving to liquidate from our continent. There is an alternative to Euro-African Association with these deadly implications for Africa's independence and progress. It is in an African economic community in which we can all pool our production and our trade to a common advantage. It is not difficult to imagine that the Neo-Colonialists would describe this as a pooling of poverty. It is, however, too simple a distortion of fact. Africa is rich and not poor. As the great wealth that has been taken out of our continent over 5 centuries of spoliation and extortion very well proves. Africa has immense actual and potential wealth: gold, diamond, copper, manganese, bauxite, iron ore, uranium, asbestos, chrome, cobalt, a host of other minerals. Our essential agricultural produce have all been drained away by colonialist imperialism. Africa is far from being poor. It is Africans who are poor, not Africa. And they are poor because of the uncounted profit that has been made out of the exploitation of their labor and their lands.
The Parti de la Révolution Populaire Africaine de Guinée, which is the sister party of the A-APRP-GC, has sent us a statement which we will read as a part of our program. As a Pan-Africanist party, we always struggle with language, and that's one of the issues that we have to address as we as a people worldwide speaking a multitude of languages and expressions and whatnot, to be able to communicate with each other on a worldwide, international, Pan-African basis. And so we have translated our sister party's statement or intervention from French to English. That's a caveat that I would like to make. The statement was sent by the Secretary General of the PRPAG, Ismael Conde, and it reads as follows. We begin by extending warm congratulations to the brothers and sisters participating in this seminar. We believe that holding this seminar is timely. Indeed, we are living in a time of pride, honor, and greatness of Pan-Africanists around the world, a situation that requires of us even more determination and struggle. Our intervention at this seminar focuses on two subjects. The first subject is testimony. This is our testimony on the militant fraternity and combative friendship that united President Kwame Nkrumah and President Ahmed-Sékou Touré. The second topic is a reflection on the validity and topicality of the thought and of the two great emblematic figures of Pan-Africanism, President Kwame Touré and President Ahmed-Sékou Touré. This validity and topicality are obviously that of Pan-Africanism. Coming strictly speaking to our intervention in this first subject, we recall that from the first years of their independence, Ghana under Nkrumah and Guinea under Ahmed-Sékou Touré have forged strong bonds of fraternity and friendship. Guineans cannot forget the salutary help that President Nkrumah gave to Guinea after its independence to support it in its resistance to the ostracism and of the Gaullist power, which cannot support the choice made by the people of Guinea in the referendum of September 28, 1958. French colonialism rightly saw Guinean independence as a mortal danger to its domination. He therefore had to nip this independence in the bud. By his Pan-Africanist spirit, President Kwame Nkrumah was largely responsible for the failure of this objective of the first years of the Guinean Revolution. We understand better here why the creation in 1959 of the Ghana-Guinea Union, a union that will be extended to Mali after the independence of this country, to make the Ghana-Guinea-Mali Union. We know that this union played a primordial or fundamental role in the creation in 1963 of the OAU, the Organization of African Unity, today called African Union. The Ghana-Guinea-Mali Union has been the driving force behind the group of countries whose action was instrumental in the birth of the OAU. This is the group that has been called Casablanca Group. This group also included, among other countries, Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria. It should be recalled that after the signing by the various countries of the OAU Charter, the Casablanca Group asked President Kwame Nkrumah to develop his ideas of the continental government at the end of this Constituent Assembly by the OAU. In a brilliant way, President Nkrumah indicated the imperative of the formation of the continental government for the OAU to effectively enshrine the Renaissance of Africa. As an illustration, he showed that a house without a roof was not yet a house, that the roof of the OAU house was the continental government. Faced with this discourse, the reactionary states that had united in a group called the Monrovia Group opposed by threatening to withdraw from the OAU if the continental government were to be formed. Faced with this problem, the Casablanca group has developed what be called a strategic withdrawal, defined by the wisdom that between two evils, one chooses the lesser evil. The lesser evil then was to postpone the formation of the continental government. And in this regard, President Ahmed Sekou Touré said that the need for the continental government must be concretely come from the African peoples themselves, in the sense of the continental government, which is indeed the consecration of the United States of Africa, one of the ultimate goals of Pan-Africanism. We have made this historical reminder to bring out what we believe to be one of the greatest testimonies of the sincerity and depth of Pan-Africanist feelings that President Ahmed Sekou Touré nurtured for President Nkrumah. It is known that after the imperialist coup that overthrew his regime in 1966, while he was abroad, President Kwame Nkrumah chose Guinea as his host country. The people of Guinea received him fervently, and President Ahmed Sekou Touré elevated him to the rank of co-president of the Republic of Guinea. He will keep this rank until his death. Let us remember that in 1984, Guinea was to host the 20th OAU summit. President Ahmed Sekou Touré intended to seize this opportunity to better establish the idea of a continental government. The continental government, which is, we repeat, the concretization of the United States of Africa. This desire will make President Ahmed Sekou Touré publish volume 25 of his works entitled The United States of Africa, a few months before the 20th summit of the OAU set for May of 1984. To justify this obsession with the creation of the United States of Africa, President Ahmed Sekou Touré cited the following reasons. First, the fundamental idea behind the creation in 1946 of the RDA, the African Democratic Rally, was the liberation of the continent from colonialism. And after this liberation, the formation of the United States of Africa. We do not forget that the PDG, or Democratic Party of Guinea, was until the independence of Guinea, the Guinean territorial section of the RDA. Secondly, the fidelity to the memory of his peers in the Casablanca group that had committed President Kwame Nkrumah to the creation of the OAU to present his ideas on the continental government. At the turn of this second reason, more than once, President Ahmed Sekou Touré, in front of a certain audience, had to develop the following idea. I quote from memory. Unfortunately, the 20th OAU will not take place in Guinea because President Ahmed Sekou Touré died in March of 1983. We can thus remember that at that time of his death, President Ahmed Sekou Touré was fully and deeply in the mind of his twin, Kwame Nkrumah, the Pan-Africanist spirit, or the spirit of the general struggle against imperialism and neocolonialism for the advent of socialism. The validity and topicality of the doctrine of Pan-Africanism, or the thought of the Pan-Africanist Kwame Nkrumah. For the happiness of all of us, there are many writings today on the general crisis of the capitalist system. We quote here the name of the Canadian communist Naomi Klein, who at the beginning of the century spoke about capitalism, disaster capitalism. And we quote that the Nobel Prize in Economics, the American Joseph Stilts, whose book is very eloquent on the disappearance of capitalism. We want to express our feelings without boring this audience by developing this subject from an academic perspective. It is that, obviously, the condemnation of capitalism has gone beyond theoretical analysis to be placed in facts. With deep joy and honor, we begin by recalling the current phenomena that call epidemic of military coups. The epidemic, quote unquote, attacked neocolonialism to death in Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and lately Gabon. We believe that this epidemic is latent in some neo-colonies. The military coup virus is now metasizing in Africa. The economic exploitation of peoples, the exploitation of people's low feelings, the practice of neocolonialism cannot last indefinitely. The revolutionary military coups have breathed new life into African peoples, a breath of true freedom, true sovereignty, true dignity. This breath or current is irreversible. It will only grow up. In this vein, our party warmly welcomes the creation on the 16th of September of the Alliance of Sahel States. We hope that this alliance foreshadows the United States of Africa, given its anti-neocolonialist and anti-imperialist nature. We cannot ignore the intervention at the 78th UN General Assemblies of Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Togo, and even Gabon. Anti-neocolonialism and anti-imperialism were the framework of the discourse of each of its countries at the said General Assembly. Finally, we deeply rejoice in the contempt, the disregard that our peoples reserve every day more for African institutions that have become instruments in the hands of imperialism for its sordid causes. In conclusion, Pan-Africanists around the world, whether Africans on the continent or Africans in the diaspora, together we must be happier and prouder more than ever. Our common struggle is to take a great step forward, which is why since last August, we have called our statements and press conferences. The PRP-AG, by this formula, alludes to the famous French referendum of September 28, 1958. This referendum brought face-to-face among the Guinean population, Guineans committed to a colonial domination who provided the 4% of yes, and Guineans radically rejecting colonialism who produced the 96% of no. The international situation requires us to have even more radicalism and determination in our common struggle for the advent of a world of peace and justice, the world of socialism. For success at our seminar, Ready for the Revolution, Ismael Conde, Secretary General of the PRP-AG. And with that, that is how we are kind of opening this discussion with the PRP-AG. We will go directly to our brother from the Organization for the Victory of People from Guyana, Brother Gerald Pereira, and he will, from his organization, his analysis and perspective, address the theme, Down with Neo-Colonialist Imperialists and Zionists of Exploitation of Africa's Raw Materials. Brother Pereira, you have the floor.
Thank you, Brother Keita, and congratulations to the A-APRP Guinea-Conakry for hosting this seminar. I can recall in the 80s, I attended a seminar to commemorate the life, the legacy, the struggle of Kwame Nkrumah, which was held in Ghana. And our eternal revolutionary Kwame Ture was there. So I'm happy to participate in this. This is the second Nkrumah forum for me. Down with Neocolonialism, Imperialism, and Zionist exploitation of Africa's raw materials. I would like to say, because I listened to the brother from Ghana, and he said the generation, his generation, that generation betrayed the struggle and the vision of Nkrumah. And the sister from Haiti said she was surprised about Kenya getting involved in Haiti. I don't know why you will be surprised, sister, with all due respect to you. I love you. I think we need to understand the class character, the nature of the existing political parties in Africa. 95% of them, they either subscribe, some of them like Jerry Rawlings, and this is directed to my brother in Ghana. Jerry Rawlings, when we held the Nkrumah seminar at the time, it was sponsored by the Libyan, the Mataba, based in Tripoli. And they didn't even want to fly the Mataba flag because Jerry Rawlings did one good thing for me. And that was when he lined up those who were involved in the coup against Nkrumah years after and got rid of them. They were shot. But then Rawlings went down the road. He started defining himself as a social democrat. And then later on, he secured the services of one Dr. Kwesi Botchway, who was an economist. And Botchway was in bed with the IMF and World Bank, and they implemented the neoliberal policies in Ghana in the form of structural adjustment. Well, it wreaked havoc in Ghana. I won't get into that. But his policies were not even social democratic. It was more like social liberalism. And you see where Ghana is today with a neo-colonial leader, a regime that is in bed with the West and follows neoliberal economics to the T, to every letter. So Ghana is paying the price for that. You see what happened when the Eastern Bloc collapsed. Many in Africa who were proclaiming themselves as Marxist-Leninists lost their bearings, and they ended up going right back to neoliberal, to embracing capitalism. Good, because they saw what the Eastern Bloc had as an authentic form of socialist construction. And the so-called existing socialism collapsed, and they lost their bearings. You saw what happened in Mozambique and in Angola. No wonder Isabella dos Santos can end up being one of the richest women in Africa and the world. So this is what happened. And the president of the party in Kenya is committed to neoliberal economics, and it's a neoliberal regime. They're happy to do the biddings of the imperialists. Now, one of the things I always admire, and I say it in every program about the A-APRP-GC, is they never lost their orientation, because they knew that Marxism-Leninism didn't constitute a totality of what is called scientific socialism. So people like us, when it collapsed, we didn't lose our bearings. We carried on this struggle, and here we are today, because we were clear. We had our problems with the white left. We understood where they were coming from, and that very rigid and dogmatic interpretation of the writings of Marx and Lenin. But on the topic of colonialism, neo-colonialism, imperialist and Zionist exploitation of Africa, of course, no one can deny the interconnection and interrelation of colonialism, imperialism, and Zionism, because both colonialism and neo-colonialism are integral to imperialism. And the basis of imperialism, Zionism, and neo-colonialism is capitalism, because we know that capitalism came into the world as white power. But Lenin wrote about imperialism being the highest monopoly, being the highest form of, or monopoly capitalism being the highest form of imperialism. But when imperialism invaded, when imperialism went into Africa, it didn't went as monopoly capitalism. Lenin is right, but in the context of this, it was something different. The same happened in the Americas. Imperialism went into Africa, not as monopoly capitalism. It went in and it had access, it invaded and it plundered the resources of Africa. And we know, as Walter Rodney pointed out, and Eric Williams in Capitalism and Slavery, and Walter Rodney in How Europe Wanted to Develop Africa, that had it not been for the trade in captured Africans and the plunder of Africa, as well as to tremendous extent too, but mainly Africa, there would have been no capitalist development in Western Europe. As for Zionism, we know, if you look, that Zionism is racism. And again, we don't hear people inserting Zionism now. Ever since it was removed from the UN, government sat down and allowed them to remove Zionism as a form of racism in the UN Charter. It is, and it will remain for us. It's racist. Zionism and imperialism. Zionism is, of course, a form of colonialism, and it's part of white supremacy. Isidore de Beers, the founder of the De Beers Diamond Empire, provided tremendous funding to Rhodes, to Cecil Rhodes when he established the De Beers Foundation, and they enforced labor on Africans to work their mines. Thousands died. And both Isidore de Beers as well as the Rothschilds, Baron Rothschild, they were Zionists, but they were not, of course, like Theodore Herzl. They were not religious. And we know the APRP, Guinea Conakry, and people like our organization, we always draw that line between Judaism and Zionism. Zionism has always been a secular project, but they poured tremendous amount of money into the apartheid state of Israel, and they bought up land, set up factories on stolen lands of the indigenous peoples. And we also know about the relation of Zionism to the apartheid state of the then apartheid state of South Africa, the apartheid state of South Africa. Israel helped the racist Zionist state of Israel provided the nuclear the know-how and the technology to arm South Africa in the development of an atomic weapon. I could remember listening to Fidel Castro in South Africa, the World Conference Against Racism, when Castro said the Cuban forces and the troops, the fighters, freedom fighters on the frontline states had to change their battle tactics because apartheid South Africa was prepared to use limited nuclear strikes against the liberation movement and the Cuban troops. But the racist, the Zionist state of South Africa collaborated with the apartheid state. So we cannot, when Israel today, when we have neo-colonial regimes in Africa who are prepared to give Israel observer status in the African Union, we know that Kwame Nkrumah, Muammar Gaddafi, Sekou Touré, Patrice Lumumba, and Kwame Touré are rolling over in their graves. And we must expose these regimes for what they are. I do not believe that we can build African unity, a unified socialist Africa as revolutionary Pan-Africanists with neo-colonial regimes. Neo-colonial regimes have to be overthrown either by coups, or I don't see mass mobilization for the mass political parties to defeat them electorally. And recently, and I was listening to the brother from the leader of the military in Guinea saying that the system of governance that they left does not work. We know that. We know that. After the one-party states came to an end, Africa was making headway. We were achieving progress under Nkrumah, Sekou Touré, and those, when Modibo Keita, when we had the one-party state that was created to bring together the masses, the entire populace, rather than having these multiplicity of parties. And again, when those countries, after the leadership, new people came in, whether it was in Guinea Conakry, Guinea-Bissau, and so, and they embarked on this liberalization, and so the next thing you know, we had all these parties. The West set up institutions to create parties in all of these countries. Imagine in Namibia, when it was time for SWAPO to contest election, SWAPO had to stand in election against 113 parties. So you see what is going on there. But what I said in 2011 that imperialism, to reinforce what was said by Sekou Touré and Kwame Touré, that imperialism will be buried in Africa. And then in 2012, I said we must bury imperialism in Africa or perish. Because we have to understand that the Western imperialist countries, including the United States, when the Eastern Bloc collapsed and they themselves, this former so-called socialist countries, embarked on liberalization and so, the African regimes opened up to the West and allowed them to impose, they went along with the imposition of neoliberal policies, privatization, trade liberalization, sell out of the resources. So they had it. And they, apart from having continuous access by plundering the resources of Africa, we see that they've set up a military bases through AFRICOM across the continent. So the anti-colonial struggle that was waged against Western imperialism, in some areas, we were able to defeat them at the battlefield. The Portuguese had to pull out. And in areas where it was not a military victory, they cleverly, we saw that when independence was granted, or so-called independence, they had designed this project of giving us some semblance of independence, right? And they knew that they will keep control of our economy. So from day one, the so-called political independent states, the newly emerging nations, was fatally compromised, right, by the denial of economic autonomy and substantial power to control our various nation states. So these countries did not possess the requisite jurisdiction and control over the wealth within their own boundaries, and thus remain victims of foreign manipulation, Western imperial manipulation and domination. Nkrumah understood this, and Nkrumah did, and he wrote about this. And we have Jacques Waddis, who was then a member of the Communist Party of Britain, not one I agree with, but I do support what he wrote when he said, and I quote, "At the center of all the activities of neocolonialism lies its economic policies. These are directed to assisting the profit-making functions of the transnational corporations, to providing the Western powers with the necessary economic power in the newly independent states so as to be able to wield political influence over the government there and to foster a certain growth of capitalism in order to nourish a class which will cooperate with imperialism and hinder the advance of socialism." Well, we have seen that with the neoliberal phase of capitalism, that you have parties, the political parties, regimes in power who are facilitating the plunder today is worse, because when you had Nkrumah, when the CPP was in power under Nkrumah and the Democratic Party of Guinea, they had controls, a certain amount of control over their economy. Nkrumah implemented, I heard the brother said that, under Nkrumah you had projects. The state was intervening in the economy, they were building, they were manufacturing, and so today there is no manufacturing. Everything is imported from a toothpick right up, as the brother rightly pointed out. And that is what the neoliberal project is, an integral part of the recolonization or the neo-colonization of the motherland. We're witnessing it. And the role of the state has been reduced to that, what they call a watchman. This role of the state is to protect private capital, to secure it, the benefits, while keeping the struggling masses in their place. But I want to say this, that we have to continue the struggle, because we know and we've seen what is happening in Niger, what is playing out. The Western nations cannot sustain their affluent lifestyle unless they have access to the resources of Africa. And they will never, because that's not the nature of capitalism. It's not the nature of imperialism to have a balanced field. It's irrational and illogical. So they will have to have regimes that facilitate the plunder, the rape of Africa. And we as Pan-Africanists, as revolutionary Pan-Africanists, will have to wage consistent struggle by organizing across the continent and in the diaspora. We will have to support, it is our duty to support, and where necessary to give critical support to the coups that have emerged in Burkina Faso, in Mali, as well as Niger. Because we understand the principal contradiction here, and we see that imperialism is lining up against these forces. So in the absence of any revolutionary, so-called Leninist revolutionary vanguard, I pointed out earlier, that role, that vacuum can be filled by other revolutionary force, and we are seeing the revolutionary orientation of the military in challenging neocolonialism, in challenging imperialism, and standing up to Zionism. Because the Zionists are working hand in hand. The Zionists are working behind the scenes to reverse what is happening in these three countries that I just identified. And because an end to, if this goes on, if we see this pattern, if they, as we are saying that, as brother Bob Brown was always like to say, Africa is burning, and indeed Africa is burning. The African masses are standing up. When you listen to the masses in the street, the level of political consciousness is amazing. And we have to work with them. We have to be on the ground. We have to build solidarity with them to advance the struggle and to push back the French, the Americans, and the other Western imperial powers. But at the same time, we have to wage a consistent struggle against the neo-colonial regimes, like the one in Kenya, who is prepared to facilitate American intervention. The Americans are using them as a proxy to go into Haiti. And that is what they're doing. They're putting on a black face, a black mask to white supremacy, to white imperialism. And we have to be vigilant, and we have to be very conscious, and because they cannot survive. The Western world cannot survive without the plunder of Africa and having African misleaders and factotums who are prepared to serve them. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother. Other panelists were not able to join us, so we will move on to the question and answer portion of this panel. We will offer one to get us started. What we would like to offer as A-APRP-GC is that the African women and youth are the most exploited in Africa, and we suggest the African world. What impact did the colonial and now neo-colonial rape and exploitation of Africa's raw materials and from the governmental theft and corruption in Africa, how have those conditions impacted on the livelihood and health of African women and youth? That is the question that we will suggest to the floor.
I mean, I think it has a tremendous impact on the women's and the youth, because remember, the women's in our society are the backbones of the homes and the community. And oftentimes, so when their partners have to leave the homes to get involved in other type of work, there is not the same level of family support. And the women's are not able to access the same level of care, because we all know what privatization do to the system and the conditions and the pollutions that the women's have to work with, which takes a tremendous toll on their bodies. And then, of course, sometimes many of these women having to raise children by themselves, which carries another burden. And early on, sometimes they're not able to hold on to their family the way they would wish to keep the family intact. Even within the workplace, as women strive to make it, they are always constrained that the system put forward to prevent them from pushing forward. And the system that's been implemented in our Black community and the way women's are regarded, I will go back to the time when Haiti was trying to get its independence, and the way our founding fathers structured the struggle. Men and women were equally involved in the struggle for independence, and they were regarded highly in the process. There wasn't like, oh, you are a woman, you don't have to do this, you don't have, your political ideas don't have values. If you research deeper, you will see that when the battles were starting, the women's will go first, and then the men's will come afterward. But you're seeing a shift, and a lot of our women's are oppressed in different ways. So I think in the world, as we are moving and shifting into uniting Africa, into uniting our Black race, we need to create the avenues for our women to have the opportunity, because they are the mother, they are the bearer of life. Their contributions is vital to what we are seeking to establish. So we must leave room for them to grow, be a mother. And if they choose to be politically involved, we must not look at in the other direction, because a lot of time in our political system in Africa and in Haiti particularly, the women's are not allowed room to maneuver the process. And for us to become a greater society, we must understand how we each, I'm not saying men are better or women are better, but it is a unity. It's men and women working together that needs to protect our rights as we shift into the new paradigms and establishing a better community for ourselves.
All right, thank you, my sister. We will now go to Sister Ingrid Adjoa.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you very much. I am happy to be in this esteemed group, and thank you, my sister, Ms. Charles, Eugene Charles, for the presentation, both before her initial presentation and what she just said. So let me just jump into it. I wanted to make 2 points. One, about the women. The women literally are half of the entire whole. And this thing about men versus women was not a part of our history and culture before colonialism. As was pointed out before, when you research our history, that is what it was. In fact, Kwame Nkrumah had said, is quoted as saying that when you educate a woman, you educate a nation. Women is a glue that keeps things together. One of the things that heartened my heart is when I saw for the Niger coup, women came out and said they will cook, they will go out and cook, they volunteer their husbands, their sons and brothers, and they will cook to support this coup because they saw the importance of what needed to be done for their country. So that's my initial thing. But another thing that the colonials imposed on us is policies that goes against women, and it's not by accident, because when you weaken the woman, you really weaken the man as well, because we are a unit. And without that balance, it imbalances the entire whole, not just in the family unit, but in the country. Right now, in most African countries that I know of, women can't own property. And women are disadvantaged from being in control of even themselves. And those things was not a part of our culture. It was not a part of our history when you check it. So those are things that needs to be addressed. I'm heartened again by Burkina Faso, who started with Thomas Sankara with bringing in women into parliament, bringing them to the fore because it's necessary. I've said that before. So those are some of the basics that we need to start with. Start with the policies that hinder participation of women in the society in a meaningful way. Another thing I wanted to touch on is education. We cannot emphasize that enough, to educate our people, because once you educate the people, once you connect the dots to the people, they will behave like how the people in Niger behave, because they saw the connection between them having resources, riches beyond measure, and them being poor, but seeing French people up and down in their country, enjoying the riches. French has the second or third largest reserve of gold in the world, and they don't have any gold. So those are things that needs to be addressed, our education system, because I promise you, if proper, real history and geography is taught in African schools, which it is not right now, within a year, we don't even need to do anything. We would have put the power in our children's, the next generation's hands by giving them that knowledge. And I'll end by giving an anecdotal thing that happened just yesterday. I don't know if the person in my group is in this meeting now, but we had a post that was put up about the coup and the attempted coup about 2 days ago in Burkina Faso. And one person in the group said, yes, I agree, they should have a coup, because why should this one Traore. Why should he had a coup? So why should this other one not have a coup as well? And first of all, I couldn't believe what the person was saying because we're all I assumed we're all Pan-Africanists. But someone stepped in and educated him as to what the difference with Traore's, Ibrahim Traore's coup and what it meant. What it meant almost immediately for Niger to just look. Niger has nationalized their assets and moved their sale of uranium from 80 cents to 200 pounds. He just used that example to show the person, to educate the person. And he said, oh, okay, thank you for explaining that to me. You will be surprised at the ignorance walking around. And because there is that lack of knowledge, it leaves it open for the colonizer to tell you stories, and people will take it on. Because if you don't tell the story, they will listen to somebody who is going to tell a story. So those are my two contributions. But I really love that this is happening. It must happen more, this meaning the seminar, and it must happen more regularly. I'll be keeping in touch with the person who invited me. I think I am a part of A-APRP, but I'm not sure. I'm not active, definitely. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, my sister. And we definitely encourage you to join and help us build this party.
Thank you. I think we can start right here by looking at the number of people we are having on this panel participating and regular participants. One of the things that I observe as a woman, even within my own community, I work very closely with a lot of brothers who are in the movement, but oftentimes you'll see the brothers in the forefront and you don't see the women. So I think as we are working and building that unity, yes, the women have their role in the house, they have a lot of work they're doing, but I will encourage all of my brothers who are here, just like I also address with my Haitian brothers that I work with. It's important to have that wonderful woman who's backing you up in the home to be involved in the work and creating a space, and for them to be engaged as well, because that creates the opportunity for your daughters who are growing in the home to see that it is a unit that is working together and taking the message and taking your work and your legacy to push it forward. So that creates the avenues for them to know that it's okay for me to go out there to speak because my dad is doing it and my dad got my back. My sister is doing it. My sister or my aunt has my back, or my uncle, my cousin, my nephew has my back. So if you haven't been doing that, I encourage you, as you are speaking on these issues and getting more involved, that you bring your significant others with you. You encourage them to participate. You encourage your daughters, sisters, to get engaged as well.
All right. Thank you, my sister. And I can say on behalf of GC and our AWU, we're in total agreement with that. And that there has to be a conscious effort to assure that our sisters, mothers, they are encouraged, okay, that they're actively involved in the struggles of our people. Just from the limited research that some of us has done is that half of the African population is female, more than half is female. And so we cannot talk about the emancipation of African society without the liberation and emancipation of African women and youth. The last question that I would like to offer on behalf of GC has to do with when we talk about overthrowing or destroying neocolonialism, what system do we suggest, or what system is available for us to replace? If there's a system of exploitation or oppression of our people, what is that system that would bring emancipation and development to our people? That's the question on the floor.
Definitely, we have to go beyond capitalism. We cannot embrace capitalism. It was capitalism that brought the planet to where it is today. Environmental destruction, massive unemployment. Look at the world, how we live in a world where 230 billionaires if you add up their total wealth, is more than how much billions of people. And before it was the last statistics, it was 340 something billionaires, but it's getting, it's narrowing down, because one of the things about capital is that it competes to the level and it pushes out others and takes control. So it's like it's a slaughterhouse, and that's not the way. It was colonial genocide and the enslavement of Africans, as we pointed out earlier, laid the basis of capitalist development. It's an exploitative system. It's dehumanizes the human person. And the only alternative we have, I hear people talk about a third way and a third way. The only alternative is socialist transformation and construction. But I am not speaking about the model that existed in the Eastern Bloc countries, right? I believe that it must be socialism can only be built through mass participation, the active involvement of the people in having a say on the decisions that impact their life. There must be popular participation in governance, in the system of governance, as well as in control of the economy. Socialism is about establishing the power of the people as well as democratization of the economy. This is what existed. This is what Libya was building. And why I said this, brother, and it's important, because, you know, the Western Marxists, they have a very dogmatic position. They believe that there is one way to socialist construction, and they know it. And recently there was a conference in Chile that I was invited to, and I refused to go because I couldn't. If I had gone there, I'll get into clashes with people like from the editor of the Jacobin magazine and so that referred to outstanding revolutionaries such as Sekou Touré, Kwame Nkrumah, and Gaddafi as dictators. You know, that's the Trotskyites, the white left that are as racist as the white right. So the socialism that we are talking about is universal. It's scientific socialism because it's a science. And we will apply it, as Kwame Touré pointed out, as Sekou Touré did before him and Kwame Nkrumah, that we will apply it in accordance, taking our own conditions, our own specificities, and it's not intercount. But there is no alternative but to socialist construction. It's either someone, they used to say it's either socialism or barbarism. Well, it's either for the liberation and emancipation of the African worldwide, it's towards socialist transformation and construction, or we perish. There is no, capitalism has failed. It has failed. The people in the developed capitalist countries, millions are unemployed. Their standard of living is eroded. Healthcare, everything is privatized. And we are seeing that we're witnessing in those countries the casualization of labor and work. Work is no longer permanent. You can be employed for today and then tomorrow your services are terminated. The trade unions, the neoliberal project has weakened the trade unions. Collective bargaining has been replaced by contracts. And when you go to sign the contracts, they tell you, look, we will give you extra amount, provided you are not. If you join a union, we can't do this, but we will give you extra amount if you do not become unionized. So getting back to what I said earlier, the alternative is socialist, one unified socialist Africa, one unified socialist Africa. Socialism is the alternative.
I would just address the small part of our global struggle just by taking the Sahel regions. Since we have Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali having set up AES in French, which is a military strategic, alliance, they need from there to bring any other state or nation that agree to enlarge this kind of movement. What am I trying to say by that? Not against ECOWAS, but we need to empower a new approach vis-a-vis those who are coming for interest. And by saying that, I just want to point out something. We maybe have some disagreement or debate, that's good, as long as we're doing it in the right way. Imperialism, all tendencies combine it. I have the demonstration in the capital Niamey or Bamako or Ouagadougou in Burkina with some Russian flags. Nothing wrong with that. Chinese, Turkish, India, you name it. But we have to set up first our own strategy. What do we need? What do we have? What the weakness? Like the management acronym, SWOT, strength, weakness, opportunity, and threats. And from there, we can go and diversify any relationship. But the first thing is to know what is the path for our own development. Quickly, I'm going back to the women issue and impact in France by shutting off electricity, no trade agreement. You don't have the foods and needs from Benin, from Nigeria, from Togo, I think including Ghana and Ivory Coast to Niger. What are they trying to do? To get the people revealed and be against the government. And unfortunately, this evil colonialists didn't succeed to do that with the women and the youth in Niger. Quite opposite, they are supporting the new regime. But we have to be vigilant because they will use anything they can use to weaken, if not to destroy, this new experience that is occurring right now in the three countries. Thank you.
There's something that is troubling me. What is troubling me is basically this. I have a sense that our brothers and sisters in the diaspora seek validation from Africans in the Bantustans to be able to feel that they are part and parcel of the Pan-African revolutionary process. I'm saying this because the greatest army that Africa has is the diaspora Africa. You live in the belly of the beast. You know who the beast is. In Africa, we are confused. We don't know who the beast is because of the education system, the religious system, and everything. Because what we must understand is that colonialism is a serial act of corruption and violence. It's a serial act of corruption that dehumanizes every aspect of indigenous life in order for colonialism to triumph. That is what colonialism is. So we live under serious trauma that even we don't know who we are, but at least you in the diaspora, you have experience of who this beast is. So you are the army that Africa and Haiti needs for their total liberation and unification. And we sit there and pontificate about theories, education, and how are you going to go? You say education is important. How can you implement what you are talking about if you are not in charge? Please, let me digress a little bit and tell you that presently, you can have in Ghana someone graduate from the political science department at a universities, the economics departments, history departments, philosophy departments, psychology departments, without having gone through a single book of Nkrumah. Nkrumah books, images, and other things were banned after he was overthrown, and it became a criminal offense under the regime which the current president's father was the president, and it still remains. That is the reality that we face. It faces us. So coming to my point, we sit down and pontificate for the US and its NATO allies to change regimes to satisfy their own interests and sense of economic security. Why do we sit down for them to do it? It's in our own interest also, Pan-African interest also, that we see that we change regimes. And this is exactly what happened between 1943 and 1945, leading to the Manchester Conference in 1945. They sat down, Padmo, Cyril James, Nkrumah, Wallace Johnson, others, Jomo Kenyatta, they sat down. They said Pan-Africanism, having conferences here and all that, have no meaning unless we had a territory to launch the liberation. They thought about it and said that Sierra Leone. So they were preparing Wallace Johnson to go to Sierra Leone. Then a letter came from Gold Coast and Nkrumah inviting him. And Nkrumah went and showed it to Padmo and Cyril James. They called Wallace Johnson, called a meeting, and they said, Wallace, the program has changed. It is Gold Coast. So Nkrumah, go. They gave a plan, worked out a plan and a strategy. And in 1947, December, Nkrumah left from Liverpool to Ghana. And between 47 and 57, Ghana, we got a territory. Now, if you look anywhere in Africa, we don't have a liberated territory. So that is a challenge facing us now. And it was the diaspora, Padmo and others. So it is your responsibility to see to it that we change regimes also after our own interests and image. That is a challenge facing us. The Bantu stance, we call these nation states of African Union. We have to launch liberation struggles. Everything is detailed in the handbook of revolutionary warfare. The strategy is there. What are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? Do you want me to invite you? Who am I? Me who have betrayed and reduced your children to feel shy of being an African because of the behavior of my generation ruling Africa now, that we have reduced our societies to spectacle of ridicule across the world so that our children in the diaspora shrink from being linked to Africa. That is the challenge. That is the challenge. I don't need you to invite you to Africa. Africa, you are even more African than I am. That is a reality. Those in Haiti, in Suriname, in Brazil, in Trinidad, Jamaica, in the forest, they are more African than I am. That is the reality. Africa, we have to liberate Africa. And the blueprint is there. Please, please, own Africa. Africa is yours. Don't let the US, France, Germany, and all these people to own Africa. It is very sad. The very forces that combined their military and intelligence to overthrow Nkrumah and create a watershed for Africa that has not recovered since 1966. Successive regimes, including the current regime, have made the economy to benefit the very forces that overthrew Nkrumah. The Canadians, they have the best pickings. The Dutch, they have the best picking in Ghana. The French, they have the best picking in Ghana. The Americans, the Israelis, the Germans, the Norwegians, they have the best pickings of the economy, of the resources in Ghana. And these were those who combined their intelligence and military resources to undermine and overthrow Nkrumah. And my generation, we invite them there and we consult with them. Can you imagine Professor Bocci, who our brother mentioned, the finance minister, having consult with the Canadian ambassador and has a child with the Canadian ambassador? How could you be a finance minister sleeping with the Canadian ambassador and to have a child with the Canadian ambassador? Rollins was going out with a German from the German embassy. What all this mess? This is Ghana for you, please. So I beg, I have to stop. I've spoken too much, but please, own Africa. You are the army. Own Africa. Own Africa. Own Africa. No one should. I don't want to utter it. It's a curse for me to utter it from my mouth. You are an African. I cannot deny you who you are as an African. If you go to the temples and pyramids in Egypt, in Sudan, inscribed on the walls. Man, know thyself. It is the greatest of all teachings. Greatest of all teachings. You are an African. You have a responsibility to see that, to aid that Africa changes regimes in our own interest and image. To end, I don't want to see any call for any Pan-African Congress, because Pan-Africanism returned to Africa in 1947 when Nkrumah returned to Africa. And in 1958, he called the All African People's Congress to reinforce that fact. So there was no need for any Pan-African Congresses. Right now, yesterday, the struggle was towards colonial freedom. Today, the struggle is towards neo-colonial freedom. And so we have to organize ourselves with that consciousness in mind, that we have a responsibility to launch a third Chimurenga, a liberation movement to liberate the Bantustans that were clustered around as African Union. It's a shame. I feel so ashamed that Gaddafi, my goodness, look at the humiliation to me, my soul, an African soul, and look at whether the then African Union could not utter a single word. Thank you very much.
My brother, Brother Keita, I'll just like to thank the brother for what he said. I listened carefully to his plea. And as you know, Brother Kwame and the Toure and the brothers from the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, GC, you've always said we're Africans, period. Not African Americans, African Guyanese, we're Africans, period. And I listened to the brother and what he said, it is true. What he pointed out about Jerry Rawlings and about Kwesi Bochwe, who was then the finance minister. In fact, when he implemented brought in the neoliberal economics into Ghana, the so-called structural adjustment program, at the time, he was having a relationship with the U.S. ambassador, who was the woman he was. But now I'm hearing too that he went on to father a child with a Canadian woman. He seemed to have a special obsession with white women. But we know about the U.S. ambassador. These are the type of misleaders and fake Pan-Africanists that we have that in our midst that have to be swept away.
All right, with that, we will bring this panel to a close. On behalf of the A-APRP-GC, we think these issues are fundamental to the struggles of our people. We are also a socialist party. One of the things that Kwame Nkrumah always said was that an economic system has to answer one or two questions: all will control or some will control. And of course, we are for a society in which the people have absolute control of society itself, politically, economically, culturally, etc. It has to be in the hands of the masses of the people. That is what we understand that Nkrumah, Kwame Nkrumah, all of them were fighting for, was that the power of society had to be in the hands of a politically educated and organized population.
Correct. Well said.
Also, we think it's very important because there's always been struggle around the question of Pan-Africanism, about the diaspora and the Africans born home, and some called Du Bois the father of Pan-Africanism, all these kinds of issues. But one of the things that Nkrumah said in class struggle was the core of the African revolution is in Africa. And so the diaspora has a role to play. There's no question about that. There's no question that we are all Africans. Nkrumah says it correctly, that all people of African descent are African and belong to the African nation. But at the same time, the transformation of the African continent will be from the inside out. And I think, speaking on behalf of GC, it doesn't exclude the diaspora. But what we can see is that Africa is inspiring Africans around the world. And I think this has been true in the history of our people. Africa has not been given the credit that is due for its contribution to the advancement of Africans living outside of the African continent. And so with that, we'll take a short break and begin to move into our third and last panel.
Kwame Nkrumah. Here the king of Africa, Lord God have mercy. This one is a special dedication to ones and ones who hail Kwame Nkrumah. Lord God have mercy. To
Why did you leave so soon? I miss you so. When we are gonna see you again? Kwame Nkrumah, boy. Why did you leave so soon? I miss you so. When we are gonna see you again? Kwame Nkrumah, boy. Why did you leave so soon? I miss you so. When we are gonna see you again? Kwame Nkrumah, boy. Why did you leave so soon? I miss you so. When we are gonna see you again?
Alright. The independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it's linked up with the total liberation of the whole African continent. You voiced it as scandalous as thunder and made your mark as the black president. Born some 100 years ago inside in Cromful, you taught us not to fool or carry water in a basket. You walked in the belly of the beast till your shoe sole dropped off, but you still hit the deadly nail into the slave master's casket. Oh, Sergeant Kwame Nkrumah, you shouted self-government now, when the rest of them still slumbered in the calcon of procrastination. Yet imperialism, nepotism, pluralism, and nyafu dideism were never part of you as a man. Black like jerks, or Sajifo, Breu.
Why did you leave so soon? I miss you so. When we are gonna see you again? Kwame Nkrumah, boy. Why did you leave so soon? I miss you so. When we are gonna see you again?
Yes, you said it with no doubt that we prefer self-government with danger to servitude in tranquility. As a little child, born to Nyaniba and Kofi Ngoloma, and attending school in Hafasini, you were full of ability. Materialism you hated like a cankerworm, as honesty soon made you a celebrity. At Kulungugu, the bombs flew around your head, perpetrated by the enemies of serenity. Oh, Jah bless, let no one curse. The saying goes with no element of inferiority. Ghana would one day queue to buy common salt. You said it when your government was toppled by some cacophonous drunk soldier man with no dignity.
Why did you leave so soon? I miss you so. When we are gonna see you again? Kwame Nkrumah, boy. Why did you leave so soon? I miss you so. When we are gonna see you again?
Oh yeah, Granny Kwame Nkrumah, you're the great man from Africa. Come liberate my brother from mental slavery. Yeah. Oh yeah, Granny Kwame Nkrumah, you're the great man from Africa. Come liberate my brother from mental slavery. Say me can deny your inspiration for the black nation. No need to fight, we should unite for the future generation. Oh yeah, Kwame Nkrumah, oh 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 yeah,
Nkrumah, do re mi fa sol la si do. Musical soul fast echo from the hearts of the rumbleless band. A musical leader whose love for black dignity would always be true and remain like the footsteps in the sand. Wake up the spirit of Africa and uphold the name of a great son of the land. Nkrumah, you love Africa so much so that you never looted any booty from the motherland. Hail Nkrumah, Osajefu, Nkrumah. Hail the king, direct descendant of the Nzimaland. It is time to pacify the spirits of Nkrumah. Hail Rastafari.
So we will again listen to the words leading us to our discussion of sanctions as an act of war on our people.
33% of the world is living under some sort of sanctions. But where did this idea come from? What are sanctions? It's the action taken against the economy of another country. The objective is not financial, though. It is political. You weaken the economy, you force the leadership to act. Ancient Greece is said to have pioneered sanctions. The city of Athens banned traders from another city, Megara. A more sophisticated attempt was made by Napoleon. In 1806, he announced the continental blockade. He tried to cut off Britain from Europe. No trade, no travel, not even mail. By the 20th century, sanctions became more formal. The League of Nations, Woodrow Wilson called it a silent, deadly and terrible remedy. In 1935, fascist Italy invaded Ethiopia. 4 separate sanctions were imposed on Italy and its dictator Benito Mussolini. The United States tried to do the same with Japan in 1941. Japanese funds in the US were frozen. There was an oil embargo as well. Most countries are not scared or deterred by sanctions. They try to work around them. They prepare for them.
The disintegrating buildings of Cuba's once magnificent capital, a reflection of a crumbling economy. It's as though the country had been frozen in time.
They should have removed it long time ago. If after all this time the United States hasn't achieved anything, it certainly won't now. It only hurts our people.
Zimbabwe has been under sanctions, illegal unilateral sanctions by the United States, the Europeans, Canada, and Australians for the past 22 years. And when you read the policy statement of the Zidera sanctions, they are clear that they want to assist the Zimbabwean people to achieve democratic change, not democracy. So what it means is that people in Zimbabwe are being punished collectively by sanctions, deprived of water, healthcare, education, food, so that they are forced to vote for the opposition that happens to be called the Movement of Democratic Change.
The United States is pleased with the adoption today of Resolution 2023, imposing additional sanctions on Eritrea.
Regarding Eritrea, it should be noted that for the 3rd consecutive year, the monitoring group has found no evidence of Eritrean support to the Somali terrorist group Al-Shabaab.
The monitoring group, in its outcome reports, for 3 years in a row, has concluded that there is not evidence of Eritrea providing assistance to Al-Shabaab, and the border dispute with Djibouti is being settled through mediation with Qatar. Sanctions have to be dealt with, not as an ends in and of themselves, but rather a temporary and obligatory procedure which we draw upon with clear limits to attain a political goal. It is unacceptable for sanctions to go on endlessly without any time-bound criteria.
Again, this will take us into our last discussion. Down with neo-colonialists, imperialists, and Zionist sanctions. and I think this is important for the A-APRP-GC, that sanctions are an act of war on our people. Imperialist sanctions are acts of war against the mass of the people of the targeted country. Its purpose is to bring mass suffering of the people and compel them to opt for capitalism for the sake of survival. Cuba, Eritrea, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, and other targets has brought undue suffering and death. And so the questions of sanctions are not, sometimes you can look at the governmental issues, government to government, when they talk about sanctions, but the reality is that the everyday man and woman and child suffers tremendously when they don't have the basic needs of life provided for them. And the United States is the leading power in the world that applies sanctions to all those that it is opposed to. And we think it's very important that it's understood that those countries who are fighting to build social societies bear the brunt of sanctions, particularly when you look at Cuba and for the years that it has been under sanctions by U.S. imperialism and the impact that it has had on Cuban society. But as the revolutionary struggles of our people progresses, other countries have also now been targeted by imperialism to get them to capitulate to the desires of capitalism and imperialism worldwide. And so with that, we will bring in our guests. Our first presenter today is Bamboshi. We'll take the floor to you.
Good evening, and thanks to everybody for their presentation. It has been a very sharp and clear discussion on the questions of the current reality in our continent and the struggles that must be waged, the struggles that must be continued, and the participation of our people, not just in Africa, but throughout the African diaspora. There is still, for many of us, questions that must be raised. The questions of these coups d'etats and why they are occurring now. And we are happy that these coups d'etats are taking place in the French neo-colonies, and that the people who are being replaced were definitely neo-colonial agents of France. However, we think that there's a number of things that must be addressed also. When we say that the coup d'etat is taking place, I don't think that we understand the necessity for supporting the positive aspects of these coups. I think Brother Addai-Sebo touched on it, and so did Paul Sankara and other people. However, we must also raise the question of the negative aspects of these coups, and we must do it in an honest and unsentimental way to get a clear understanding of where we are and what we must do. I think that to change language from a colonial language is a process of re-education and is definitely necessary. I think to evict colonial administrators and colonial military from your country is a very positive aspect of these coups. I think that these coups have to go a little further, that there must be some form of replacement of other tools of the French colonialism that must take place. There must be a replacement of the sale of our resources to France at prices that are utterly ridiculous. That if we continue to do this, then we have not changed much. So that has to stop. And if we can't get the proper value for our resources, then let them stay in the ground. I think that we have to look at how France has used its economic power to control its colonies, and the necessity to also get rid of the CFA. I think all of these are questions that I'm sure the brothers and sisters who have, removed French colonialism and French neo-colonialism is pondering And if it's any way that masses of people can help them with this, they should. But even greater, France was not the only oppressor and exploiter in these colonies, in these countries, in these neo-colonies. So if you put France out and you do not put out AFRICOM, if you do not put out the interests of the United States, what have you done? And here again, we're raising these questions because I think that our brothers and sisters who we must support must also know that we want to know the answers to these questions. AFRICOM is not your friend. And if you borrow a tank from AFRICOM to go and pull a coup d'etat, then AFRICOM will make you pay for that in one way or the other. And hopefully we understand that the solution to this is that AFRICOM must go. AFRICOM must be put out of Africa. There's no way that any country in Africa should be occupied by a foreign army. AFRICOM must go. We see throughout the continent also that the masses of our people are clamoring for independence. They understand the suppression. They understand that the development of Europe, the development of France, the development of England, the development of these countries didn't accidentally happen around the seaport. It happened around the seaport because that is where resources from Africa was brought into Europe. Here again, we must look at our history. And the people are clamoring for independence, but the people still lack organization. And we cannot assume that Pan-Africanism will fall from the sky or be brought about because a military coup has been pulled. Our people must be organized. We want to ensure that our coup d'etats, and Nkrumah tell us that in Africa, there are areas that are enemy held. There are areas that are contested and areas that are liberated. We must support our liberated zones. If these zones are becoming liberated, and I would say they are all contested, both the enemy held and the liberated, then to change the quantity of force, the quality of force that exists, we must, in all factors, support the struggle for liberation. And we need organization. Pan-Africanism, again, will not fall from the sky. I think that when we look at the role of France, of the EU, of NATO, of US imperialism via AFRICOM or the IMF or even NED, when we look at sanctions, they all have one thing in common. They're tools for the continuing exploitation and the continuing oppression of our people in Africa. Sanctions affect our people in Africa basically because the development of Africa, or what could have been the development of Africa, has gone to the development of Europe and America. The sanctions in Africa has not just affected our people in Africa, but it'll also affect our people in the diaspora, in definitely Venezuela, where a large majority of our people live. They are affected by sanctions every day, and this sanctions have forced them to leave their country and to seek food, to seek definitely a way of living that gives some quality to life. The same is taking place in Nicaragua, in Cuba. And, you know, this is the continuation of our old practice. The United States, in negotiating with Cuba in the past, have said that they would give Cuba a certain amount of visas every year so that Cubans could come to the US to visit their families, etc., legally, or that Cubans in the US could go back to Cuba where they may want to go for funerals or weddings or whatever, legally. But the quantity of visas that the United States have promised Cuba in the past never occurred. They may have promised 40 or 50,000 visas. they may have issued 60 or 600. And so the only way Cubans could get to the United States is to get on a raft, because no international transportation will let you travel to another country without a visa, because it just means you're going to be stuck at the port of entry and they'll have to bring you back. So when you go to get on a plane, the first thing they ask you to do international travel is, do you have a passport and a visa? So the only way Cubans could come to the US is if they got on a raft, risk their life, travel across shark-infested waters to come to the United States. This played very well to the US public when the US media would say, look at these people, they're trying so hard to escape Cuba, they have to get on a raft to get to the United States. So you see these kind of interpretation playing out today with Venezuela. Undoubtedly, one of the largest populations of people at the Mexican border is Venezuelans, but it's because of the war that has been placed on Venezuela under the guise of sanctions. And the same thing is happening in Africa. Some of the largest populations getting on boats and being trafficked to Europe are from Eritrea. And you heard in that movie clip our brothers from Eritrea and what they said about sanctions. So sanctions is an act of war. And we call on everybody to struggle against sanctions just as they would struggle against any other form of war. Our people need that. We also wanted to take a look at what the extraction processes mean in Africa, and also the fact that when we look at Nkrumah, it was Nkrumah who rose up the struggle against nuclear weapons in Africa. And I must say that in the Congo, the uranium that was used to bomb over 200,000 people in Japan, killed 200,000 people or more in 3 days in Japan, was mined in the Congo. And while those people in Japan were definitely victims of the US genocide, the people in the Congo who mined the uranium, who suffered and died from uranium poisoning, who worked those mines, are also victims of genocide of the United States, of the Belgians, and of the France. And the United States in the 1960s thought they had found uranium in the Southwest, in New Mexico, etc. And they did the same thing in the Southwest. While they forced the Belgians to close the mines, the uranium mine in the Congo, they came to the Southwest in New Mexico, the state of the United States, and beginning in the 1960s, they started mining for uranium. And they started testing uranium and nuclear bombs in New Mexico and in those southwestern states. And the people who suffered the most, the fallout from those bombs, were our Native American brothers and sisters. So there is this continuation of this legacy of genocide perpetuated in one way or the other, either by the direct dropping of uranium or plutonium bombs on people, or the murder, the genocide of the folks who worked those mines or were forced to work those mines in extractive capacities. Because of this, in the 1960s, France decided that they would test their entry into the nuclear arms race in Algeria, Sahara. And you know, France in the 1960s had a bitter struggle, armed struggle with the Algerians over their independence. And so testing in the Sahara also killed people from Algeria through the fallout. And again, as our brother Addai-Sebo mentioned, Patrice Lumumba was assassinated because of uranium in the Congo, because the United States, in recently released CIA documents, said they were concerned that Lumumba's friendship with Russia would make them sell uranium to Russia and not to the United States, and that he needed to be eliminated. So Kwame Nkrumah, when the testing started in the Sahara, said that no parts of Africa should be faced with uranium testing, with atomic bomb testing. And he outlawed it, and he sanctioned France. And he said that he would hold all of France's resources in Ghana as insurance if anything happened to any Ghanaian citizen or other people in Africa because of these tests in the Sahara. And because of that struggle and the struggle inside the OAU to declare in the 1960s, to declare uranium nuclear bomb testing in the Sahara as illegal, the UN declared Africa a nuclear-free zone. One of the reasons South Africa hid the fact that they had the bomb. So we see here that neo-colonial countries have served their colonial masters since the early 60s. And we must add that not all of French colonies became neo-colonial countries immediately. The change occurred over a period of time. France killed a lot of African leaders because they wouldn't accept the Safe-Reign or wouldn't accept French military bases on their territory. The correctness of Nkrumah's axiom is shown. Pan-Africanism, he says, is the only solution for the problem facing the African people. Today, we must look at mass organizing of the Africans throughout the world. And I will end here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll keep moving. Brother Boubacar, are you ready?
Thank you very much, Mwalimu. I don't know if I'm not mistaken, that is a Swahili name. And Sunjata Keita, what a great name. I know that this name is very great for us Africans, because for some who do not know, Sunjata Keita was an emperor of the kingdom of Manden Kingdom. So that is what is very important people to know. So I'm very privileged to be here in this panel and to share my experience with you. And I'm happy to see Mr. Paul Sankara, who some years ago, I think, if I'm not wrong, I worked on Straight Talk Africa with Ndugu Shaka Sali, and today I'm very happy to share the same panel with him. And all of you, I'm very delighted to be here. So I am in Niamey, and as you mentioned it, today all eyes are in these three countries, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, for the revolutionary that is happening here in Niger, in Mali, and in Burkina Faso. So on my part, I would like to talk a little bit about Niger, what led to the coup d'etat that today we are discussing, we are talking about. You know, it's good to go back in the history. In 2009, there was a president who came to the end of his second term. That was the late President Muhammadu Tanja, who at some time wanted to value our uranium. He wanted to have different partners in terms of relationship. But as you know, the French imperialists didn't want Niger to succeed in this project of diversifying his partners. And there was a coup d'etat led by General Salunjibo. So it's good to know about it, because even Tanja was a military who turned into politics and he became a president. He has ruled the country very well. Many Nigerians were really happy about his ruling. The only problem that he had at that time was that he wanted to have extra time after the 2 terms. And guess what happened? The coup d'etat happened that was orchestrated by France. Why do I say it was France responsible for the coup d'etat? Because the man who overthrew Tanja, that is Salunjibo, was invited at the independence of France, that is in July, the celebration that they organized. He was invited to France. And during this visit, they imposed him the man to come after the transition. And after his transition, who came to power? The Socialist, Muhammadu Isufu, who was a real puppet, who has sold our country to France. Because today, everything that is happening in Niger, he is responsible for that situation. He was the one who ruled Niger like a colony of France. At his time, the French imposes the price of uranium. We don't even know how much it was sold in the market. So they gave us what they want. We don't exactly know. They keep the uranium mines. They do everything that they want, because what he wants is just France to secure him and his government to rule Niger. And after his second term, that was the first time that we experienced alternative, that is to a civilian to hand over the power to another civilian. And how did it happen? He imposed again his friend, Bazoum Mohamed, who knows exactly what France wants, who was able also, or who was ready to sell Niger to the benefit of France. And he imposed the President Bazoum, who was not elected, but some people who do not know exactly what happened in Niger during the elections, they say that he was democratically elected. But we Nigerians who are on the ground, we know that he was not elected. He was imposed, or let's say, to quote someone, he was selected by France and the outgoing president, Yusuf Mamadou, against the will of Nigerians, because the man who was elected at that time was the former president, Muhammad Usman, who was also overthrown by a coup d'etat led by the late Bare Mainasara. So it's very good to go back in the history. So the person who won the elections in 2021 was not Bazoum, but it was Muhammad Usman, the former president. But they imposed him as president, because when you go on the site of the Electoral Commission, you will see the result. You cannot believe the result. It's unbelievable when the result that they gave us. So you see, they imposed them against the will of Nigerians. We were not happy about that. And now that the military came to power, we express our joy. We are happy that the regime is over today, because they have served the interest of France instead of serving the people of Niger. Because despite all the riches that you mentioned, we have uranium, we have gold, we have iron, we have oil. Despite all these riches, Niger, during the time of Isufu, lags behind. It was behind all the countries in the world. So you see, we do not benefit from the riches that we have in our country. So what is important for him is just to serve, or to make the French be happy in serving them, and not serving the interests of the nation. And today, when the coup happened, all the regions of Niger, people went out to show that they were happy that the regime is overthrown. And today, the military is strongly supported by people. And the first thing that we supporters of the regime said, we don't want to see any French military on our ground, because we understood those French people who came here to say that they come here as helpers, they were not helping us, because we could not understand. We could not understand the equipment that they have, the intelligence that they have, and we are attacked day in, day out. Some attacks even occurred close to Niamey. Right now that I'm talking to you, my own village, my own home village is taken by jihadists. Most of people have fled from the village right now. Some are here in the capital and some are living in the cities and neighboring Burkina Faso. We could not understand that they could not see those jihadists moving on motorcycles in groups, despite all the equipment that they have, the intelligence. So we started to think that those people are really complotting with us. They are not here to help us, but they are here just to save their interest. That's why we insist on the departure of the French troops. And since September 2nd, we decided to occupy the base where we have the French troops. And every day we are making noise on the ground until they leave our country. At the beginning, you all hear what the president of France said. He said that he will not leave Niger because he does not recognize the authorities. And his ambassador also will not leave Niger. He said, okay, it doesn't matter. We are going to see if Niger is part of France or Niger is another country different from France. Because we cannot say that it is independent, but we are on the way to be independent. But in the past, we were not independent. It's just on the paper that we were independent, but on the ground, we were not independent. Because today, the military, the French military that is in the base, because they are at the airport, we have some parts of the airport that our own military cannot have access. In our own nation, we don't have access to some parts of the airport of Niger to see how Niger is sold to the colonial powers, to France, to Canadians, because they are of all their military here. We have a base of Canada, we have a base of Germany, we have a base of Italy. So today, and the Americans, we have a lot of military here today, more than 6,000 or 7,000 military that we have today in Niger. Because when we say we have only 1,500 of French troops, it's not true. Now we come to understand that it's more than that what they are reporting. We are talking about 4,000 French troops here in Niger, and they are all going to leave very soon. You see, so that is what makes us today to be very strong, especially we have the support of the Burkinabe, the support of Malians, because we have the same cause. We all understood that France is not here to help us, but they are here to loot our riches. And we say enough is enough. And we are determined. And the determination led today to the departure of the ambassador that he refused to call back in France. Today the ambassador has left. And we are waiting for the soldiers also to leave. They said to give them until the end of the year. But here we do not hear the same speech. On our part, we are demanding the CNSP to give them maximum 3 weeks to leave our nation. 3 weeks, and tomorrow, Sunday, we will celebrate the first month of occupying the base where the French are living. And tomorrow it will be a very, very big rally that we are going to organize in front of the base tomorrow to ask them again that we are not going to allow them to stay more time. No, we are fed up with them and they are going to leave. So we have the support of many Pan-Africans like you we are very grateful to know today that we have many supporters around the world. And I'm really grateful to the wonderful job that you have been doing today to support the Africans who are trying to liberate themselves. So 2 days ago, the Pan-African from Benin, Kemi Seba, who is well known, he came here also to support us, to give us a strong support that he is behind the Nigerians. And despite all the sanctions that ECOWAS and France have taken on Niger, we don't care. Right now that I'm talking to you, there is no lights. It has been for 2 months now that we don't have electricity in Niger, but we don't care about all, because the fight that we are leading is for sovereignty and there is no price for it. Okay, so the sacrifice, we know it will be very big and we are ready to make any sacrifice for it. The borders are closed, especially the border of Benin. Right now, thousands of lorries are blocked over there, carrying goods, carrying medical goods, and they refuse to open the borders. But despite all those sanctions, we keep it up. We keep it up, and we are stronger and stronger. We don't fear. We don't go back in our fights. That is the message that we want everyone to know. Nigerian, today I can say that here in this platform, I am the spokesperson of Nigerians, and I will tell you that no Nigerian is concerned about all the sanctions, even though it's difficult, but we know that we shall overcome all those difficulties. All the nations that have reached independence, total independence, have suffered. See how Algeria got her independence from France. It was a lot of sacrifice. We are also on the same way, no matter what will be the sacrifice, because we know that it's difficult, because today in the hospitals, there is no power. People are dying in the hospitals, but we don't care about all these things, because we know that we will come to the end of this situation very, very soon. And we also recognize the effort of Burkina Faso, which is providing us, since the sanctions, Burkina Faso is really providing us food, because in the past weeks, we received more than 500 lorries that came here in Niger with food. So we really appreciate the support of Burkina Faso and Mali, as they said that they are standing with Niger people, and any country which is trying to attack Niger, they will defend Niger, and we are really very happy for that. So I want to tell you that we Nigerians, we are standing as one man, and we are going to face any situation. So that's what I would like to give you as my contribution as a Pan-Africanist. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my brother, for those words and your analysis and your update on the situation inside of Niger. Moving forward, we're going to bring our brother Sadere Akale as the representative of the himself from the Revolutionary Socialist Movement. My brother Sadare, you do have the floor.
Hello, good evening, comrades. Thank you very much for this event. The interesting part of this event is that I'm in Accra, Ghana. I have traveled from Abuja to Lagos in Nigeria, from Lagos to Accra today. Accra. So today I'm speaking from Accra, and I've been in Accra since on Thursday. That is another 48 hours ago. Then, being a Marxist myself, I've read about the work of Kwame Nkrumah. I've read what happened between 1953 to 1966, February 24th of 1966, when Nkrumah was on his way to China. And before reaching China, there are betrayers of taking over government of Kwame Nkrumah. But something profound happened since I returned, since I got to Ghana, was that younger generation of youth between the age of 18 to 35 were clamoring for a system that Nkrumah himself represents. I have also had the cost to interview people, to ask young people, working class, what are you thinking about your current government? Yes, about 5 decades ago, Nkrumah was overthrown, but I challenge you, comrades, today, that the roads that Nkrumah constructed are what they were still using in Accra, Ghana today. The electricity, the dam built by Nkrumah are what makes electricity still functioning. Became unlike Nigeria, where there is no 24 hours electricity. Since I've been to Ghana 48 hours ago, there has been electricity in Ghana. It has never blinked. Unlike the country I came from, Nigeria, where electricity is 6 hours, 10 hours, 2 hours, or most days we go a week without electricity. So, comrades, the interesting topics that have been sent, I've tried. Of course, none of the books are what we have read before. I've also again shows that we must continue to fight for a world of justice, a world of socialism. Lazy historians will tell you that socialism is not possible. They will tell you that go to Venezuela, go to Cuba, socialism has failed. They referred us to the 1917 and Russia and 1920 when Lenin died. Then they say the world capitalism as global and has ruled the world. But they did not explain to us where are the sources of capitalism. They did not explain to us how blockade has affected Cuba, how blockade has affected Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Bolivia. They do not explain to us why didn't imperialism and capitalism globally allow people to live their life without interference from imperialism. Why is US going to sponsor coup in Burkina Faso? Why is the French running after the new junta in Niger? In Nigeria, we are opposed completely the interference of the old man in power not to ever go to invade Niger in the name of fighting for ECOWAS. We are opposed to sanctions. We have written about it. We have gone straight to demand this. Comrades, I need to tell you this evening that in Nigeria, an oil-producing country, number six in the world, has no refinery. As number 6 countries in the world with oil, we have no refinery to mine our own oil. So we have to export crude oil, then bring in petrol. And as I speak to you, petroleum prices are beyond what ordinary people can use. I've been in Ghana for the past 48 hours on an event in developing blueprints for how we can combat imperialism, how we can fight for an Africa with one currency, an Africa that the government will be accountable to the people and not to the puppet imperialism. And let me make it clear, the struggle for self-determination is inalienable right. And I'm saying this, comrade, as I'm speaking to you, the poverty in Africa is becoming feasible. Leaving Nigeria by road to Ghana is practical, that poverty is entrenched in our people. It is a pitiable condition. Yes, there are developments of few bourgeoisies, money-minded. Late President Nkrumah referred to them as money-minded individuals. I can tell you that on the street of Africa, there are petty bourgeois, there are bourgeoisie who ride in limousine, in Benz, but do not in any way share the ideas of transforming Africa to a better country. Every 4 years elections, we elect criminals to take over who share our wealth with the people, with the Western people. Then, comrades, it is important to let comrades know that the unity of the working class in Africa will usher in a new world. But as we speak, the crisis today is the crisis of a conquered continent. And as a Marxist, as a revolutionary, as a socialist, we support all struggles of the working people across Africa to combat imperialism, to confront imperialism, to kick out all the puppets in Africa. But it's not going to be a day work. We have to educate our people because as we speak, when I got to the University of Ghana for this event, I saw a poster, big posters of people saying, "Come to Jesus, Jesus will save you." My grandfathers have been praying to Jesus since 18th century. Practically, nothing has come from it. As we speak today in this event, this important event, the solution to comfort capitalism is we need to reintroduce political educations to our people. We must use our social media handles, our writings, our podcasts to campaign, to begin to continue to campaign for a society, an African country where its resources are used to meet demands of the people. Comrades, Niger exposed imperialism. As I speak also, I must confess to comrades that in the Accra as we speak, comrades have confirmed to me, our comrades Owela Kempa in Nigeria has wrote about how Akufo, the present president of Ghana, allows the parliament to allow US to come and invade the country. They have a base here in Ghana. Comrades have promised to even take me there. I'm saying this so that we can know that our continent is conquered. And the only way we can fight back, when we educate our people, the struggle the Nigerians have shown to the new junta shows practically that things have changed. The French government do not make any serious threats when the military took over in Gabon. Why? Because in the article I wrote, I refer to it as a new wine in a old wine in a new bottle. No trust in the generals, because these are pro-West coup plotters. But every day there are attempts to take over government from the Burkina leadership because they were radical, because they were socialists, because they were trying to fight for something more radical. And of course, the Nkrumah life shows that a planned economy is possible. Of course, there are elements of capitalism during the government, but the reality have shown practically on ground in Ghana that when we have leaders that are determined, when we have leaders that are ready to use our resources for our needs, then we need to also educate the people to be able to stand and fight. And that is why up to today, the government, the Western imperialism, with the support of the bank, wants to continue to borrow us money, to give us aid. Instead of that, what we need is development. What is advanced technology? What we need in Africa is use our resources for our needs, to provide an education that can.
All right, he may have lost connection, but we will go ahead and move towards our question and answers section for this particular panel. Again, the focus of the panel had to do with the questions of sanctions, which are used as weapons against the people. And I think our brother clearly pointed out that in his travels in Africa, one of the highlights that was evident for him as he moved was that poverty is a reality of the masses of our people, even though the continent is minerally rich and agriculturally rich, and in terms of resources, very rich, but our people are poor. So we will offer a question just to get us started as it relates to sanctions. And the question that we will offer as a start is, what is the best strategy to wage political war against international imperialism sanctions against Africa and worldwide? How do we attack this question of sanctions that are having such a detrimental impact on our people worldwide? And that's the question on the floor. If someone wants to take the lead in answering that question, and then we can, if there are other questions, we'll take them also.
I would just like to, just some brief comments. The first one was made by my respected brother Shango, Elder Shango, and what he mentioned about the negative side of coups and so. Well, we are aware that coups are different to revolutions. Coups and revolutions are not the same, but revolutions can commence as coups and evolve or develop into full-fledged revolutionary transformation. We have reactionary coups and we have revolutionary coups. The coup that overthrew Usagifo was a reactionary coup. It was aimed at maintaining, preserving neo-colonial rule and imperial rule in Ghana. And we're witnessing that up to today. You had a coup in 1969 in Libya, and that coup
of course, it started off as a coup and carried out revolutionary transformation. So we are looking, that's why some of us were very cautious about what took place in Gabon, and I support what the brother said. But Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso is completely different. But I do agree with the brother that that aspect of decolonization, changing the language, and so it's important, it is fundamental. But we have to carry out social we have to change the existing social and economic, the production relations that must be transformed. That's important. So we have to struggle, we have to support our brothers, and we have to take that to the other phases of the revolutionary struggle. The other thing is, my brother from Ghana did say what happened in Libya and the African Union stood still. Some countries, just for the records, brother Robert Mugabe and Eritrea did quietly offer, I know what I'm saying, fighters. And Gaddafi told Mugabe, you stay your ground, because when they destroy Libya, they're coming for you, right? But I think apart from being overconfident, what happened there was, there was a lot of the Western propaganda and lies about African black mercenaries fighting for Gaddafi. They were not mercenaries. Many of those people were Tuaregs and sub-Saharan Africans who were residing in Libya for decades. So they took up weaponry in the fight, and we know the role of the French. It was the French military that bombed the convoy, the Gaddafi convoy, as they were leaving Sirte for safety, because they had run out of food and everything, and the place was destroyed. It was French, and it was the French who led the charge. It was the French who conspired with Hillary Clinton, the Conde Obama. I'm not defending Obama whatsoever, but he fell for the lies of the whore of Babylon, or the whore of Washington, and the rest is history. On the issue of Venezuela, Guyana has an influx of Venezuelans coming in, but I want to draw your attention to this. I see Venezuelans every day in Guyana, and I am hard pressed to find one African from Venezuela. Most of them, and I want to read it because the Venezuelan struggle is not just about its class and race. Those of you who went to Venezuela before Chavez and the Bolivarian Revolution would know that Africans in Venezuela were in the margins of the society. The oil wealth never reached those people and the indigenous people. So when the Bolivarian Revolution came and they started to address it, the people, a lot of those who fled, the refugees, many of them, I'm not saying all, but there were people who, many of them enjoyed the benefits of the oil wealth. And you will be hard pressed to find the African Venezuelans, because they lived through decades of hardship. So they know what it is to struggle. It's interesting that the head of the Venezuelan ground forces is an African. And it was for years, decades, that Venezuela had diplomatic relations with Guyana. Venezuela never sent an African, even in the embassy, much less to be an ambassador. Right? The Bolivarian Revolution sent 2 African women, one after the other, as diplomats, as ambassadors to Guyana. I had the opportunity of meeting them. Both of them were hold PhDs, brilliant women, committed to the struggle. And the new ambassador to Guyana is an African, and we have good relations with them. So what I'm saying is that the Latin American, what's happening in Latin America, the same thing goes with Ecuador and Bolivia. They have the issue of class and race, because a lot of some of those who are the descendants who have the Spanish blood identify with Spain, they are racist. And yes, and we know what is going on. So when for example, in Bolivia, when Evo Morales was elected as president, there were those who were saying we don't want an indigenous president, and they were prepared to carry out secession in a part of the country. So we have to look at this. the Africans in Venezuela have been the Bolivarian revolution have moved Africans in Venezuela from the margins to the center. When I used in the early days, I go to Venezuela. The only time I saw Africans at the airport was when you go into the washroom. They would be there cleaning the toilets and so. When you go to Venezuela now, the last time I transit there, I spent a couple of days. You see at the cambios, the bookstores at the airport, the immigration staff who's very welcoming the way they treat you. Young people in the military outfits, 23, 24 years of age, you can African men and women. So, this is something that they just shift to the margins. But as the brother pointed out from Nigeria, and Brother Shamgo pointed out, sanctions are an act of war, and they are waging war against Cuba and war against Venezuela. But yet, with all the pressure on Cuba, you go to Cuba, you can walk the streets at 3 o'clock in the morning. You can send your little daughter up the road and not a finger will be laid on them. I don't think you can do it in any part of the Caribbean or North America. There's not one person sleeping in the street. And the medical care, you can take in, you have a serious, we know, right? You have to get an operation. There's no waiting, you're treated. So this has shown you have a system that puts human needs and the human person above profits and capital accumulation. And that's why Venezuela, Cuba, and the Bolivarian Revolution, as well as Nicaragua, as my brother, we have to support these struggles because imperialism never gives. It never gives those who decide to chart a new course or a new path breathing space. They never do. They go after you from day one. So we have to support those struggles because, as we pointed out earlier, socialism is the only alternative and we have to fight for it.
Thank you, my brother. Are there any other responses to the question or any other questions?
I wanted to add something on the issue of migration. Different countries are facing migration issues for various aspects. For us, I'm sure you've seen in the press a lot of Haitians who are leaving Haiti. It is a planned situation where Haitians are being put in a situation to leave the country so more lands can become available for the powers to acquire those lands. And the fact that the weapons that are infesting our streets are here from the United States, there is not much recourse left for the Haitian populations. And whether they are in the Dominican Republic, they are being pushed away. Many are now traveling to Nicaragua and Mexico. Of course, the U.S. has recently signed an agreement with the Mexican government to deport Haitians who are arriving on their soil and not allowing them to cross the border. So we've faced different immigration situations for different reasons, but I think at the core, Haitians have a responsibility to work within the country to regain a power to work for development for us to be able to provide for our citizens, and particularly get an environment where we will have enough universities and create enough jobs for our resources and our young men and women to stay home to help develop the nation instead of having this brain drainage that is going on in the country, because a lot of our professionals who are being trained throughout the Haitian university systems, once they graduate, there is not sufficient employment for them. They leave to come to the US or go to Canada or go to France. And we as a nation, if we want to sustain ourselves and become self-sufficient, we have to find a way to keep our resources and the investment that we need in our young people. They need to be able to at home. And overall, in the issue of the coup in Haiti, we've experienced many coups d'etats, and of course, most of those coups have been, of course, at the command of the US government. And the puppets put into office have not been individuals who work for the betterment of the Haitians, who all push policies that will make change for the Haitian society. I think as a people, we need to look forward in terms of how we're going to gain our freedom. Freedom is not given, freedom is taken. As we see Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali working together to try to retain their independence and work to bring policies that will benefit the populations, I think we in Haiti as well need to make a concerted effort to work together. And as a Black race, we need to make a efforts to work together. And we do a lot of conferences, a lot of speaking, but we need to begin looking at actions in terms of how we can concretize the words that we are saying into being changed to the populations who's been suffering for quite some time.
I would just like to say something also, Mwalimu. Today, over 50% of the world's population is under some kind of sanctions, usually unilateral sanctions, which means one country created them, that are imposed on these countries, and that one country that is creating most of these unilateral sanctions is the United States. And that inside the UN, they take up these sanctions after the United States created. And the United States then impose it on the UN. So it would seem that it would be beneficial if we look at as a people, as organizations, we can ask all of these sanctioned countries to come together in some form of unity to get around the sanctions. These unilateral sanctions are not ironclad. They're not non-defeatable. As a matter of fact, currently, the United States have in their prisons in Miami a Venezuelan diplomat whose only crime was that he broke the US sanctions and got medicine and oil for the people of Venezuela. So again, I just like to express that.
We talk about coup d'etat, so sort of speaking in the military way. Not let us forget that we have the coup d'etat, the civilian one, trying to manipulate the constitution. Rather from Niger was talking about some who were asking for a third term under the reason of whatever. We didn't hear ECOWAS or any, colonialist countries as France condemning what happened, for example, in Chad. So don't wait when things are complicated to intervene, so-called of democracy and et cetera, et cetera. No, any coup d'etat, if you just use the same principle, you condemn any coup d'etat. But because of such country, you don't say anything like Gabon or Chad. The others, because they're having a different path, using a different terminology and tone of speech supported by the people, you talk about bringing the democracy. That's all I want to bring. You have the coup d'etat militaire, but you have the civilian coup d'etat also. And for our struggle, keep in mind that you have some, in a given country, women and men that will always serve as impediments, as well, certain countries against others. Right now, should we go to invade militarily Niger or not? ECOWAS led by current president, Nigerian, which is the president of ECOWAS for 1 year, supported by Ivory Coast, Benin, Togo. So that's for what reason? The populations are interlinked, intertwined. Trades, they get married from one side to another. They have social and historical and cultural and commercial, common benefits and links. So it's being nonsense to say, yes, you can use my country to invade or bombard Niger. But someone is behind and let them know what to say, what to do. Important. So in the struggle, we would have to deal with those brothers and sisters that are completely brainwashed or white skin and black skin and white masks. Thank you.
I wonder if I could share my screen. I just have a couple of things to add. Aibobo to everyone. I would welcome all of this discussion. I want to say on behalf of the Free Haiti movement and the Ezeli Network that we stand in solidarity with Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and all Africans all over the planet who are trying to lift up the yoke of white domination and suppression and all of these resources. I was going to just add something that I think is always missing with reference to IET. And that is that the United States built its largest embassy in the Western Hemisphere in IET because of our resources and because of our geopolitical position with reference to Cuba and Venezuela. It's something that we constantly say. And as we look at this question of embargo and sanctions, and these are weapons of war, and they are used in IET in different ways. There is an embargo right now and has always been of arms, so that the IETian police can't get arms unless they are approved by the United States. So you have a situation where the US arms terrorists, which they call gangs in the media, and then you have the police without any arms, without any bullets. And that's kind of another way of them using sanctions and embargoes that I thought I would add to it, so you will understand, as the Haitian people, as the Haitian people fight, you have this embarrassing situation where the small little Haitian military is begging for arms so that it can go after the terrorists, which the United States is not. They control the narrative. And this is kind of the thing. We want to have a Black-ruled independent nation in an IET. That's Dessalines' dream, but not a republic in the way of the 1885 Berlin Conference republics. These lines that they put together, these things that we always are saying to Mali, Burkina Faso, and all of Africa, that they have to get rid of these lines and look at their people and look at the fact that we are at war and have been at war for more than 5 to 1,000 years against these Mandeles, in the King Congo language of Mambo Inan of the Haitian Revolution. So the points I want to make is that we understand and we know that everything that happens in IET already is happening in Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso. And the way the US works is that it uses, like I said, the embargoes, the sanctions, the free zones, the free trades. These are weapons of war. These free trade areas are where they do their money laundering, where they take out our resources, where we don't control customs. So I always ask Africans, if you are talking about freedom, what is it when you don't own any heavy metal industry to fight back these warlike people? We don't have the United States, France, Canada, Germany, Spain, Brazil. These are the core group of nations that have come as one against IET. They formed themselves as the Ottawa Initiative back in 2003. So there is no question that the only purpose of these white nations or buffer nations of Brazil is to control the resources of our country and dominate, like Napoleon said. The only reason he was against Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines was to dominate the advance of the Black nations in the world. But as we look at strategy at the Free IET movement, we see, for instance, a division between the core group finally, right? Because Brazil and Lula certainly learned his lesson. The United States promised Lula in 2004 that if he came and led their mission and gave a racial front to their mission in IET, they would give him a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. Today, U.S. is everywhere during the 78th Assembly asking or telling folks the name of IET came out of many people's mouths, including this guy, William Ruto, in Kenya, who the U.S. is looking to be their next racial front in the destruction of IET. But here is what we look at as Free IET. We look at the fact that Brazil and Lula have learned their lesson. Lula is the first one recently to say, when the Dominican Republic, so this is the other thing too, they have the Dominican Republic, a fascist, racist buffer nation made of, as Abinader has said, 85% immigrants that they brought in, right, to dilute the Blackness of that nation. And they are at our borders and control our food, whether we get Miami rice or the 2-3 billion that the Dominican Republic makes by dumping its food and our food made by Haitians on sugar plantations and other plantations in Dominican Republic. So right now, here's the issue. 80% of the diaspora, the Haitian diaspora, are integrationist Negroes, suburban amnesia folks who are only looking, who have so much PTSD on the colonial narrative of the savage Haitians that they're only looking to take care of their families and not be part of anything. And then you have 20% of the diaspora that fight with us. And Haiti is different. And this is what I'm saying goes for every nation, right? Pretty much, right? But the diaspora remittances is what still holds up Haiti. So the Haitian diaspora is useful in that they provide us with that 3 billion per year. But whose hands does that go into? That goes into the hands of the Middle Eastern oligarchs, so that we have no control of a local economy. They bring in whatever. So what does it mean to be a nation, a republic, if you have no heavy metal industry, no warplanes, no submarines? You don't control your borders, you don't control your coast guards, you don't control your shorelines, you don't control your waterways, you don't control satellites, you don't control communications, you don't even control your electricity. So I would urge, and this is our challenge in Haiti. We are looking and we are educating our next generation to understand about iridium, which Haiti has mountains of them. The gold, we have about 20 billion in gold, 8 billion in copper, and we have lithium. And as we understand what's going on in BRICS, as we see that they add Argentina and its lithium, we understand that there is a shift, not only in alliances, but in how resources are going to be used between gas, which we have about 120 billion. The US takes up our oil and gas and steals it. And they also do that with our gold through the Dominican Republic. Right now, there's a big issue with the Massacre River in Haiti, where the Dominican Republic, we're supposed to share this river. The United States basically pushed our borders back. We had more land in 1929, but they keep pushing us, hoping to push us into the sea, and they use the Dominican Republics for it. But there is a 1929 treaty that allows both Haiti and Dominican Republic to be able to use this river to irrigate their land. The Dominican Republic has built about 12 irrigational canals on that land. And now that Haitians are building they have closed the borders. They have brought their militaries right at that border. And Haitians with no government help are still building that irrigational canal. The United States and no other country have said nothing about that except Brazil. And so as we look at how do we get allies, how do we get heavy metal industry? How do we create the weapons? I think those are the questions that we have to look at. So we are training our next generation to know what to do with mining. I think that education is critically important. I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, my sister. All right, Brother Addai, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Regarding embargoes and sanctions, sanctions and embargoes are made possible because of the nature of the dependency of our political economy. Please, let's go back to history. Our ancestors, though they had their own currencies and weight and measure systems, in trading with the Europeans and the Arabs, never traded their commodity for their currency. So if you trade your commodity for their currency, you are disempowering yourself. Niger now is blessed with a regime that is trying to assume control of its resources. And that is currency, solid commodity currency. Why would you exchange your gold for the fiat dollar that is not backed by any resources, but by the might and fiat of the US? Why would you do that? Paper money that is printed, it has no value. Why would you do that? Your ancestor did not do that. But why would you do it now? Please, there is a great opportunity now in Sahel for this to be changed. Please, there's a great opportunity. So my brother, please look at this. If you drop the US dollar now, or the EU, or the pound sterling, that is the beginning of your liberation and the breaking of the sanctions. Thank you.
Thank you. Brother Vernon, you now have the floor.
Well, I want to thank you very much for this time, and I'm going to be as brief as possible. I think that that Africa, and of course African Americans as well, are faced with a very, very dangerous and brutal practice that's going on right now. I don't know if anybody's touched on it or maybe perhaps not aware, and that is the rise of LGBTQ. You see, now I know that this may be a little bit off the subject, but I think it goes along with sanctions. I really do, because you see, it involves population. You see, and population is threatened. It has been proven to be threatened by that type of practice. The white countries like Finland and Switzerland, where it's prevalent, has shown actually a decrease in population as a result of LGBTQ. Okay, here in the United States, you see where the Black community is really, really being primed and encouraged by the media. You can see that in the situation going with say Magic Johnson and his son, who is openly gay. And then there's Dwayne Wade and his wife, Gabrielle Union, have an openly gay son. You see, all of that, you see, is to encourage the Black community toward that end. You see, there's no saying that monkey see, monkey do. The people follow along with these people because they are celebrities. And of course, as you know, celebrities, particularly in the Black community, celebrities are highly regarded. They're highly sought after. Now, in Africa, Africa has a problem here whereby you see there's a lot of talk about, hey, anti-LGBTQ here, anti-LGBTQ, don't let it come in. True, which I agree with President Museveni. You see, when he made a big argument against it on the Ugandan floor. But what we don't see now is that Nollywood in Nigeria, you see, is making LGBTQ movies that promote the practice. You see, of course, they don't directly promote it, they inadvertently promote it, but the message comes across. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
As Osajefo said, we must unite or we will perish. This is more than accurate and relevant today. In order to do so, I will just quote Thomas Sankara, we need to control what we consume and consume what we control, period. I'll make it short. Some may already say the same ideas, but that's what we need. We have a good example today with the three countries making a military defense alliance agreement among Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. Let's start with this first trio, the three countries, and then we will see how we can spread it with others, knowing that we have to keep vigilant because all the different Bantustan, I'm totally agree with brother from Ghana, do not have the same idea, philosophical idea. Let me give you a concrete example. The current president of Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire in French, used to be the second executive person in IMF, International Monetary Fund. He went to West African Bank, Central Bank, and then became president, to make short. He said there is no reason to cut the link between France money, current, and CFA. Everything is fine, it's perfect. How can you make a Pan-Africanism with, I mean, not even a Pan-Africanism, the same road, the same journey, the same path for African development with it. So let's start with concrete example, Niger, Burkina. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother. We are coming to the end of our program. We thank all those who have listened in. We definitely thank our brothers and sisters who have provided so much quality information and analysis of your particular area of the world in which you live. Before we leave, we're going to put on screen for those who have interest in joining the A-APRP-GC information that allow you to contact us. We will be having an orientation soon. So take the time and record all the information that we're getting ready to provide for you through our slides. And again, on behalf of the All African People's Revolutionary Party GC, again, we extend our thanks. And as always, we stand ready for revolution. We thank you.